This is the DRF Players Podcast.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 282, the November 1st, 2017 edition. Happy birthday, Mom. It's also very special because it's not just the DRF Players Podcast. It's also the Matt Bernier Show. And as many of you know, unless you're brand new to the program, the original host of this show, the reason this show exists, I'd go so far as to say, is because of the man sitting, sometimes I do the metaphorical, sitting on my right. This is a literal, sitting on my left, Matt Bernier. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, and I appreciate the intro, but I'm far from the only reason this thing went off. I mean, if you had not been all in on doing this thing together and along with Mike Hogan, this thing never would have gotten going. So, no, look, it's always nice to come back and do these little joint shows when we can do them. We did one up at Saratoga. What was it, Whitney Day, Whitney Weekend, something like that?
Yep.
And obviously we did this last year, too, for the Breeders' Cup. So I guess the scary thing for me is now I'm at that point in life now where I don't want the birthdays to come anymore. So when the Saratogas and when the Breeders' Cups and when the Derbies keep coming, that just means that, oh, wow, like we're going the wrong direction right now.
Okay, now, the early days of the podcast, as folks know, basically consisted of podcast host emeritus Mike Hogan and I making fun of how old Matt Bernier was.
Correct.
So when you're making these comments
Correct.
here as I'm going to say 26-year-old?
No. I'm an old man now, Pete. I'm 28.
28? Okay.
I'm inching closer to 3-0.
It's just hard to accept as someone who's, despite having a young daughter, is legitimately old. But I will say this about the podcast. Some would say the MVP, the secret weapon of the podcast, did not make himself known until later. People love to they love to hear him talk about his fashion sense, his Bob Baffert wig, his love of chalk. He is, of course, the people's champion, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
Sometimes I try to think of like funny stuff to say, but you kind of set me up perfectly with the thing I was going to say. Like at some point of this show, I might have to mute to go and flip my laundry because I'm trying to get some stains out of these white pants I'm planning on wearing. So when you hear that happen, that there's a chance. And they say you're not supposed to wear white after Labor Day, but it's Del Mar and it's Breeders' Cup, and like I feel like you're allowed to do it.
I think you may be right that there's an exception. You could, Emily Post might call you into the steward's office for the white after Labor Day. But Matt, do you think we should let him get away with it?
I'm just curious, what is going to be the top section? Are we dealing with, like, if you went white jacket too, you want to talk about just Don Juan? That would be fantastic.
No, I don't own a jacket, so I'm gonna go
true
white.
enough.
I think
true
I'm gonna
enough.
go. I'm gonna go ahead and let the outfit out of the bag right now. I think I'm gonna go white pants. This black and white like herringbone. I don't know what the official color is. The Alabama. They're like alternate white and black thing. What's that thing called? You know what I'm talking about? Like the color pattern where it's like white and black. Alabama does it. They have the little Bear Bryant hats. Look like it. It's
yeah, I know. Houndstooth.
Houndstooth.
Is that
White and black
I don't know where. I don't know what synapse in my brain.
Yeah.
When it was only because you said Bear Bryant that got it to me.
The best thing too was just how I saw it. That thing came to mind, and it was like bang, got him.
Yeah. And so I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's either gonna be white pants and that, or white pants, black T-shirt with these white shoes that look like they got like crazy color paint spilt all over them. So they'll be making their debut. We'll see what happens.
Two more fashion things before we get down to business here. The first, I'm sorry, I'm just amusing myself at this point. But JK, when are you going to bust out the romp hymn? We know you've talked about doing it at Belmont. We know you've got this in you. I didn't think it was possible until at Saratoga. I did see grown men with the matching prints, top and bottom. It did occur to me seeing other people do it. JK could maybe get that one in off the goalpost. When's it going to happen?
Oh, there's some things I can't even picture myself doing, and I think that's one of them. So I don't know if I have the body for a romp hymn anyway. So.
All right, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough of the fashion talk. Perhaps we'll go back there a little bit later in the show. But we do have 13 Breeders' Cup races to talk about, starting with the 4 on Friday, of course, the nice little appetizer leading up to the main event that is this year's Breeders' Cup Classic. Let's dive in to the BC Juvenile Fillies Turf, which goes as race 6 on Friday. Matt, as our sort of co-host / guest, let's start with you. Do you have a view in this race?
Yeah,
real quick, hold on, wait a second.
Go ahead.
I got an idea.
Hit me.
It just came to me, so sorry. It's a little. We should have
production meeting. We like production meetings in the middle of the show. That's been a hallmark since show 1, and we're on show 282. So go ahead.
You get 2 points for first, 1 point for second.
Oh, jeez.
The person that has the least amount of points of the 3 of us with our top selection gives up their avatar to the other 2 for 1 week.
I'm in.
Deal.
And that's funny. That reminds me the other fashion point I was going to make. Do you still have the Fu Manchu?
No, the Fu Manchu had to get. I had a parent-teacher conference.
Oh, that's the whole point. You're meant to wear it for the parent-teacher conference.
People that know what I have going on at times in my life will understand why I needed to probably present myself a little bit better. I couldn't be too silly in the parent-teacher conference. I had to take care of it before.
You're a wimp. All right, back to the.
All right, so 2 points for winning, 1 point for second.
Do we want
the bottom man on the totem pole gives up the avatar for a week,
and nothing for third? We're just going to do first and second. Do you want to do like a placed horse, a win, do the 2-1 that way, or do you like the first and second?
Yeah, just first and second.
Okay,
it's
I'm good with that.
Is there any sort of like bonus? Because I mean, I've got some horses in here that are going to be 20-1 that I'm putting on top. I mean, I'd like to if one of them connects, I'd like to think that values more than Lady Aurelia at 7-5.
I mean, look, we should have probably done this drill. We can just do, if you want to change it up, we can just do the mutual amounts. Just be
I like that.
Let's do that. More of a traditional contest
mutual
rather than
amounts.
Points-based. Because you're right, it does change what you'd pick.
Win place or just win?
Win place.
Okay.
That'll help with the long shots.
$2 win place, that's fine. I'm cool.
$2 win place, no caps.
Done.
One horse per race. I love it, JK. Good move.
Well done.
Here we go.
And we'll do and no repeats. Let's do no repeats.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, let's make it interesting.
So once you make a pick, off the board.
Yeah,
I like that. Okay.
So
I have the honors.
You got the honors.
Your honor. Okay. I have to be honest. I kind of look at this race and I know everyone's going to immediately go to Chad. It's a rushing fall, visually awesome in the Jessamine. She was really nice in that maiden score. Significant form. I have no real knock against her. I want a horse coming out of significant form's race though. The Miss Griot. I thought the runner-up best performance ran very, very well. She was wider than wide throughout. You look at the way that she came home. She came home in 28 seconds. She's getting Lasix on. I know Clement's record in the Breeders' Cup has been a little bit subpar, but I like the fact that she's drawn inside. I think there's going to be a little bit of speed, maybe not a ton, but enough. I'm going to go with best performance in the Juvenile Fillies Turf.
You totally jacked my pick. I love that case.
It's even better that you gave me the honor first, too.
I gave you the honor because I was like, nobody's going to pick this 20-1 shot. I was texting with JK about best performance today as a potential outsider when I finally dove into the race. JK, you go second.
I was like prepared for like you guys to pick my horses, and I was like, I was going to pick best performance as like kind of my, they took my horse. I'm going to take Rushing Fall. I thought that the horse was the last race was really impressive, circling the field like that, kind of drawn off, ears flicking around. I think this one's really good. I think Significant Form is really good, but I think Significant Form might be the down the line type. I think Rushing Fall is the perfect type for this race, and I think she's going to run well in here. I would like to say something creative and something exciting, but honestly, Matt stole that. I think best performance is super live out of the race with Significant Form, closed into a slow pace, wide on both turns or the turn and a half. I think that horse is going to run big in that spot, saving ground from the inside. Rushing Fall is my top pick.
That same dynamic that you described about the Chads, the one for now and the one for later, that might be the same thing that's going on with the Aidan O'Brien fillies in this race. And my idea, and I have to give props to our friend Candace Hare for this a little bit too, because I feel like she articulated this better than I did when I was originally looking at the form here. Just the idea that Happily is this forwardly placed, very much in form, terrific Group 1 filly who seems to me ready to win this race, and I'm very interested in her for this race, and I'm going to make her my official selection for these purposes as I circle that on my form. But I think, down the line, September looks like one who could be in Epsom Oaks filly. like really galloping and very talented and could very well be good enough to win this race. But I think down the line is another one to have a look at.
Yeah, she's the Euro for me in here, September. And like you say, maybe it's a matter of Happily is just more I don't want to say crank, that's not the right way. More precocious, ready to go. By the way, it's already 1-0 Houston. The idea that I agree with you there. Maybe it's just as simple as that. I do think September has some quality, though. I think she has a giant chance on Friday.
Yeah, no, definitely. Multi-race bets, I would want her as well.
I think that, since we're going to be very selection-driven during this conversation, I think it's fun to kind of sidetrack into some conversations that don't necessarily have to do with the winner. Who is going to be on the lead in this race? Anybody?
I mean, one of these European sprinty-looking things has a chance. One who looks fast. I'm actually worried they're going to hold her up, but I'll mention her. I think she'd be fast enough to make the lead if she wanted it, and I think she's got a chance. My buddy Rob Dove, friend of the podcast, one of the top 10 pro punters in the USA Today, likes this one, and my buddy Kevin Blake also, who co-hosts the Final Furlong podcast, which I had the pleasure of being a guest on this week, mentioned her as well as a live chance. The number 3, Now You're Talking, JK. She's got a lot of speed. She looks really sprinty on the tape, but when you look at that breeding and you see Zoffany and you look into the female family and you see a bunch of horses who look like milers, a little bit interesting as at 1,000,000 to 1 as a maiden. Maybe not one to leave out in your verticals. I'm not sure she'll make the lead, but I throw her in there just because she's one I want to talk about anyway. Matt, who do you think is going to make the lead in here?
Well, I understand if you just look at the fractions, maybe that most recent start for Ultima D doesn't look like she's got some big early gas, but you go to the start 2 back when she was up at Saratoga, she was throwing down 22 and change for the opening quarter, and I personally don't think she can win from off the pace. I think you have to go on with her. Whether or not she's fast enough to make the top or not remains to be seen. A horse that I don't know if I love her chances in this race, but I think down the road, I think there is something with Dixie Moon. I think she's got some ability. She's always been forwardly placed in all of her races, but again, there's a difference between being forwardly placed going 24 and a piece as opposed to what you may get with these stretch-out sprinters that you're talking about.
Fair enough. JK, do you want to answer your own question before we move on to the mile?
No, I mean, I defer to Wesley in these situations because that's what he does. He gets them ready. He trains them to get out of the gate. That's why they win at Keeneland, because they learn to pop the gate. They pop the gate before the others do. And so it just feels like those horses are the ones that are usually going to get away from the gate faster than the other ones. Ultima D's workout the other day was actually pretty good, too. Worked with Hemp Hooray. I was lucky enough to be watching it live, and like I joke about, I don't know what they're doing out there. As long as they're running, they got 4 legs, I'm good. Ultima D smoked Hemp Hooray in the gallop out. And so that horse kind of caught my attention. I would imagine she'd be forwardly placed.
Sidetrack question for you, JK. It is now Houston 2, Dodgers 0 in the top of the first. What's going to be higher, the total handle on Saturday or our friend Jake Ballas' blood pressure right now?
I talked to Jake. He's got a flight in the morning. I said, where are you going to watch the game? You going to drink some beers? He's like, no, I'm not. I'm saving myself for the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out. Let's move on to the dirt mile. I was looking forward to having more of a philosophical conversation about this race, but I think I like the depth we were able to go into that first race with, and maybe we should just
no, because I listened to the show the other day with you guys, and I encourage it. I want to hear.
All right,
I know
do it.
I know this is not your cup of tea. This race,
it isn't in. It's like when you work in racing, and you know this, Matt. When you work in racing, you have sort of like different hats that you wear, right? There's like your hat as somebody who talks about racing and writes about racing. There's your hat as somebody who bets on racing. For me, with like my racing fan hat on, I just don't like this race because I feel like it's artificial. I mean, I understand its purpose. If I were a breeder and that was the hat that I wore, I would love this race. Hey, another chance to win a Grade 1 and get my horse, in front of everybody in the industry, winning this big race during our biggest festival. But as a racing fan, what a happy sound coming from the kitchen from producer Craig. But as a racing fan, I just feel like this race diminishes the 2 other races. That said, meaning the sprint and the classic. That said, it doesn't mean you can't find an interesting bet in here. I don't really hate it. It's just like when I get, and I'm not talking about you, Matt, but like you'll see people on Twitter will give me a hard time. Somebody even tried to turn it into like a horse safety issue somehow, and I just start rolling my eyes and just want to dig in my heels and I'll admit I'm being childish. I'll like dig in my heels and talk about how it's a fake race, etc. Blah blah blah.
No, I guess I just kind of look at it more and think there are horses that this is what they do. And for those horses, I don't think they should be punished or not have the ability to play on the biggest stage because they don't fit the 10 furlong mold or the 6 furlong mold. I feel like a Sharp Azteca is a perfect example. I highly doubt he could get 1.25 miles, and 6 furlongs is just much too short for him, I think. His gear is 7 to 8 furlongs, and I don't have any doubt that he's one of the most talented naturally horses that we have in training right now. What you think of the trainer aside, that's entirely up to you, but you can tell this horse has some ability. He can run, clearly. To me, this weekend is about showcasing the best that we have, and I would just I would hate to see this horse be completely eliminated because he doesn't have a race to run it.
Right, you're right. He is a good example of one who really, it's not like, oh, I'm taking the easy way out. He just doesn't really fit in those other races at all. JK, what do you think about this question?
It's like an appetizer right at dinner. It's like, it looks delicious. It probably is delicious. I'm a little bit hungry. They're probably going to take too long for my main course. But then when I have the appetizer, then I'm not as hungry for the good meal. And I feel like that's what this race does. It's not that it's a problem. I like the race. It's just there's some horses in this race that I would prefer seeing the Classic to make it more interesting. And so it's not that it's the appetizer's not delicious. It's that it kind of ruins my main dinner.
I guess my counter to that would be I understand that just this race in front of us, it's low-hanging fruit, but how often, what kind of horse would you rather see, with the exception, draw a line through Liam's map, because he is just the poster child.
He would be the poster child for what JK just said. Yeah.
But in this race right here, which horse could run in the Classic that all of a sudden would make the Classic itself more interesting? I mean, just because Sharp Azteca would have big speed, does that make that race really more interesting? And I'm genuinely curious what your thoughts are.
Well, where would you run Sharp Azteca? Where would they run him after they won the Kelso?
He'd have to cut back.
If there was no dirt mile, yeah, I think you would have to turn him back to 6 and try.
Well, here's what I think would have happened. They would have ran him in the Kelso, or they might have skipped the Kelso and tried him in the Woodward or something. They might have tried to run him at 1.8 miles to see what would have happened. And I'm just for playing devil's advocate. I don't really hate the race. It's like I said, it's just and you smartly eliminated my example with Liam's map. So it's I don't know, maybe more Spirit running in the Classic could make it a little bit more interesting, but isn't he the same horse as kind of West Coast, so does it really matter anyways? I get the point.
Let's talk about the specifics of this dirt mile, JK. We'll have you go first this time around.
I would have been really upset if I would have had to go second and someone stole my pick.
Oh, because we're all going to pick Practical Joke.
No, because I want Sharp Azteca.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah, this is speed of the speed. He's going to absolutely bury them.
Wow.
I mean, speed-wise. I mean, he might fall apart late and someone might come running and pick him up, and that's fine, and I'll play the race accordingly. But, on my out-of-the-gate pick 4 today, my single A horse was Sharp Azteca. He is fast, and I understand that there's question marks surrounding that barn.
Elephant in the room. Are you concerned about the idea that this is a place where, historically they're a little bit stricter when it comes to things pharmaceutically related? What did I say? Could I be a politician? Did I say that wrong?
We get the gist. Anybody that didn't need to take the blinkers off.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, and I just kind of counted through quickly. Sharp Azteca has run huge at 7 different racetracks. If something untort's going on, one of the 7 would have already discovered it. He's run huge at 7 different racetracks, and in one of those racetracks that he ran well at, what happened to be in the same state that the Breeders' Cup is happening at this Friday and Saturday. So it doesn't bother me. I think that there is question marks around the barn. I understand that, but this horse is really, really good.
Totally fair.
And I think that I love speed of the speed. I think it's going to be golden since 2014, where they can go 45 and change, and they're not going to catch him.
He is a A for me everywhere. So
Yeah,
I mean, I get it. Matt, I'm torn between two. If you want to pick next,
No, I mean, I figured we should just do this as normal and diplomatically. That's probably not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. You know, just write down the line. So now you go second, I go third, and now you have to lead off for the third race.
I like it. Let me do. I'm gonna give the more. I have two here. I'm gonna go with the more likely one. Then, and that I already said it. Practical Joke. I just feel like this is a horse who I know everything was so perfect last time, but he's run well enough around 2 turns, and I just think if he's continuing to improve, he might just be the best horse in the race. If Sharp Azteca stubs a toe, if there's too much pace pressure, if he runs too unevenly, I think Practical Joke is a huge shot here, and I have no problem hitching my wagon to him.
You know what? It probably shouldn't bother me as much as it does, but I just cannot get past the fact that he is 5 for 5 going 1 turn, and he is 0 for 5 going 2. And I know one of those races was at 10 furlongs. He doesn't want to do that in the Kentucky Derby. But there's just a part of me that, especially with this 10 post breaking from the outside, I know the statistics wouldn't suggest that, you know, the outside post breaking into the turn, or the statistics really aren't bad. It's not like it's a death sentence, but at the same time, I just don't love the idea of him having to do that.
When you design the race, it's not ideal.
Not ideal, less than ideal. I'm smitten over here because I still have top picks out there. I'm going to go with Accelerate. I hemmed and hawed a lot before I put in my analysis for the paper on Friday, excuse me. Between Sharp Azteca and Accelerate, and I ultimately went with Accelerate simply because I know the racetrack is not an issue whatsoever. He loves the racetrack. I kind of like this post with him drawn out there. I have to assume, I mean, the most interesting horse in the race, not because I like him, is More Spirit. I don't know what I'm going to get out of him. I don't know if he's going to break and do what he did in the Met. And when I say do what he did in the Met, I don't mean, you know, pop a 115 or 117. Is he going to be forwardly placed again? Or is he going to be that slug out of the gate that he's been known to be prior to this year, prior to those 3 races that he's strung together? If he doesn't break alertly and he doesn't want to go, I think Accelerate sits just off of Sharp Azteca. If for some reason Sharp Azteca doesn't fire, I think Accelerate takes this thing over.
It's a very reasonable idea. 2 more horses we need to talk about a little bit more before we move on this race. One, I just want to at least mention the long shot I was torn between. I think Awesome Slew has a bit of a chance in here. Is that crazy, or is this a horse who could be cycling up to a big race at a potentially big price? We've talked about him a lot on the show, JK. Do you give him any love at all?
I do. I do give him love, and actually, it's a funny point I've been wanting to make, and it actually works well for him. Is that this is an interesting distance because we talked about the other day. We talk about how I think Awesome Slew might be better at 1 turn, but he's only had 1 opportunity to run in a graded stakes race, going 2 turns at a mile. It's because it doesn't happen in this country. We don't do that. We don't run graded stakes races at miles for the boys as they get older. We just don't do it. And he did it in the ACAC, and he beat the player who came back and beat Neolithic, who was a quality horse in his own right. So, I mean, I think Awesome Slew is, as much as I want to not side with the closer, I think that this is the most likely of the closers that's gonna pick up the pieces if it falls apart up front. So I like Awesome Slew here. And I like him better than Practical Joke. And let me tell you why I don't like Practical Joke in this spot as a card-carrying member of the Practical Joke fan club, is because he got a dream run last time. And if it wasn't for my love and allegiance for that moment, that's a bet against moment.
Right.
Where he got
it
that
was just
dream
such
run
a
up the
perfect trip.
inside.
And it was like perfect it wasn't a perfect trip all of his own making. It was really like all of the circumstances. The way the track was playing, the way the pace set up. He was laid out for the race on the cutback. I get what you're saying. I just think sometimes that cutback effect can carry over an extra race, and I just think he's so good, and it's such a weird race. That's why you guys both make good points against it, but I do like him. Here's a point. I don't mean to bust your shoes, JK, but isn't the 1 mile at Churchill a 1 turn?
You're busting my shoes a little bit.
I still think the point is well taken. I'm interested in him. He's a horse. He's got a lot of finish, and he should be a big price. And he's somebody you want to look at as the Dodgers
I'm
have
actually
a pulse.
glad you busted my shoes because I'm listening to radio shows and people get, all the time when people are getting interviewed or whatever, they say the wrong thing and the host doesn't call them on it. So then as the person who said the wrong thing, you don't have the opportunity to be like, oh, damn, that was dumb, my bad. You just look like the guy who thought you were saying it right. So I appreciate you allowing me to apologize for being wrong.
I tried to do it as nice as possible. I think more spirits have bet against here.
To me, look, if he wins, I lose. Simple as that. I want no part of this horse. No part of him whatsoever. And not to go back to Awesome Slew, but he's another one. If you guys are right, I'm going to be wrong. Just because I want no part of Awesome Slew. At 2 turns, I think he is a 1-turn, not just a mile, but I think he's a 1-turn kind of closing runner. I think his best gear is from off the pace. More spirit. You can't tell me that. I know this for a fact was not the plan. He was supposed to run in the Whitney. That didn't happen. They had talked about running in the Woodward. That didn't happen. And then at that point, when he didn't get to that race, it was like, well, you know what? We're just going to train him up to the Breeders' Cup. To me, this is a horse.
Plan C.
Yeah,
Plan D.
He obviously his credentials are they speak for themselves. We know he's talented. To me, if he wins, I lose everything.
Fair enough. All right,
he's going to be close and chasing Sharp Ass Teka off a break. I don't care how many 6 furlong drills Baffert puts into this horse. He is going to be taxed.
Yeah, but reading between the lines, I think it was Marty McGee had a good interview with Baffert today about the horse, and just reading between the lines, it just was. I was wanting to run in the other direction.
6 straight gate drills. Yeah. 6 straight. He's 4 years old. He's gone to the post 13 times. What is he, just completely a slug in the morning? He doesn't want to do it? Look, again, his best race obviously makes him a major player in here. I want no part of him. I
got to take a stand against, even though Baffert is the king of the layoff. Let's go on to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. I guess that means I haven't picked first yet, so I guess that means I get to pick first here. Of course, I've now given myself a race to pick first where I do not have a strong opinion at all, but I'm going to go ahead and settle on James Garfield, who I think has the best form of the Foreign Invaders and just shapes like one who should enjoy the task at hand. There's a few other interesting ones in here. I know it looks like Massar is going to take most of the money of the Euros, but I'm going to go with James Garfield, and I guess I'm going to send it to JK next.
Well, I just got a text from our friend Danny K, who's listening live, drinking an adult beverage while he handicaps, so I'm glad he's listening. I was scared you were going to steal my pick here because I was going to pick your horse if you stole my horse. I do like James Garfield the same. One thing I want to add about James Garfield is that his trainer was an assistant in the United States, I believe, for Simon Callahan.
Yes.
Understanding turning left, understanding our style of racing, so that was encouraging for me. Ran into Frankie Dettori in a funny way. Introduction thing, it's hilarious. I'll tell the story another day, but he likes the horse a lot, thought this is one of his best chances to win over the weekend. For me, I am taking voting control. I thought that he got eliminated at the start last time. Not eliminated, but definitely hard, affected.
Bayerned. To harken back to the early days of the podcast, he got Bayerned.
Yeah, he got, and then he was wide. And then one of my favorite parts of the trip that makes me have the confidence moving forward is if you didn't watch the tape, watch it again. At about the 8th pole, or maybe inside the 8th pole, he stumbles, and it's not like he falls to his nose, but can you imagine running full speed and then stumbling where you might have broken your nose if you didn't catch yourself in the middle of your run? And then he didn't fall, obviously, and he continued on. I thought the horse ran huge that day, and I think he'll run huge at Del Mar on Friday.
He'd have been the other I'd mentioned. What do you think here, Matt?
Voting control did take a very awkward step. I don't know what it was. I think it's also worth noting, I keep pointing this out to everyone, maybe it's going to come back and look just ridiculous for me saying this, but voting control, keep in mind, when he ran that day in the Pilgrim, it's listed as firm. There was moisture in the turf. There was a fair amount, to the point where I was stunned that it was actually listed as firm. I kind of figured it was going to be good, but that's just something to file away in the back of your head. James Garfield, I picked him second. I think he's got a giant chance. I think I'm on the wise guy horse, which worries me a little bit. When I first watched the With Anticipation, I was like, I don't know really what I think about that race. It's come back pretty live. You've had a couple of next out winners in there. Untamed Domain, Shope came out of that race. I like Catholic Boy. I kind of feel like Jonathan Thomas, he used to work for Pletcher a little while ago. His whole backstory, he was a steeplechase rider, broke his back, got out of that. I believe for a while he was paralyzed, and he eventually came back.
All true.
Miraculously, and now he's training for Lipenta, and I think he's very, very live in this spot. And everything you read and hear, it sounds like he looks very, very good. Now, again, he's going to need to improve from a fig standpoint, and he's been off since the end of August, so that's got to be a little bit of a concern. But I just kind of feel like Catholic Boy is an interesting up-and-comer.
I think the off is by design, and I'll just say right now, I mean, Jonathan Thomas is a friend of mine, a former roommate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Long ago in Saratoga, friend of the podcast as well, and just one of the great people in the game. And of course, Robert Lipenta's racing manager, John Panagot, is another one of my best friends in racing too. If these guys win, I may only have them as a saver, but I'll be smiling ear to ear for the rest of the weekend on this one. Any further thoughts from you, JK, on Catholic Boy or the rest of the BC Juvenile Turf?
Just a couple of things. Speaking of a steeplechase race rider, I don't know for sure, but I've heard that Beckford's trainer is predominantly known.
Yeah, Gordon Elliott, of course.
Jumps,
yeah, Gordon Elliott, great sticks trainer. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's silly of me, but that was a little bit of a reason to kind of fade the horse for me. That's not his. Doesn't feel like this is his specialty. What do I know? I've never even been to European racing. But anyways, that was a reason I kind of faded Beckford. And the other horse I think is interesting that I want to get you guys' take on is what do you do with Flame Away, who is, he enters a stake off of the maiden win, and it rains off, and he wins, and then he runs in the dirt, and he's awful, in a stake, and then he comes back, and he runs in a grass stake again, it comes off, and he wins. So we have no idea what's going to happen with this
unexposed
son of Scat Daddy.
Yeah,
I think he's interesting for a barn who can get grass horses to run well. I think I would at least consider saving with this horse, keeping him underneath at what should be a huge price.
I love that idea at $1 million to 1. I mean, Gordon Elliott, the guy's a great trainer. I think if he had the right horse, I'd have no problem with him here. My problem with Beckford is you watch that tape 2 back in the Vincent O'Brien, and he shapes like he's traveling all over this field and just going to go on with it and crush. And he just finds nothing. I think he's a non-stayer. Other people disagree. Off that tape, I can't bet him. It was one of the big no-finish trips of Europe for me this year.
Flame Away is a fascinating entrant in here simply because, again, for all the reasons that Jonathan brought up, but I also look at it from a pace dynamic. This is a horse that he's going to be forwardly placed. I can't imagine him. I know from the 10 post, maybe that's no bargain here, but I can't imagine him coming from that far off of it. I think he's going to be relatively close. And if you don't think there's a lot of gas in this race, and he, for some reason, takes to the turf, which, again, you look and see what he did up at Woodbine, and you look and see they've wanted him on the turf, I wouldn't be stunned at all. I'm not going to use him. If I did use him, it would be very, very defensively, but I'm not going to be shocked at all. This is the kind of horse where Mark Cassie's a smart guy. He knows what he's got here. I won't be surprised at all if this horse runs well.
I should point out, Breeders' Cup, it's one of those days where if you've got opinions in the other race, I think one of the best things we can do as racing pundits is just give people extra horses to throw into spread races.
Sure.
I've got this book coming out, as folks know, with Mike Maloney, Betting with an Edge, and one of the points he made in there that really stuck with me is the idea that you don't want to get beat in a spread race. So if you can have somebody in a race where you're planning on spreading anyway, make the case for a Flame Away or a Catholic Boy or whoever it is, that you can just, for short money, throw the horse in with your stronger opinions in other races. I think we're doing people a favor by doing that. I'd like to think anyway. So I think that I'm glad you mentioned that one, JK, and I'm glad you backed it up, Matt. Let's talk about the Breeders' Cup Distaff from a sporting point of view. Such a cool race. And I guess we're back to you, Matt, to go first.
Before we go, let's do something interesting here. Really quick, we'll go rapid fire. Matt, you go first, then I'll go, then Pete.
Yeah.
Tell me a horse that's going to get bet that you're not playing
in this race.
Yeah.
Oh, no question, Abel Tasman.
You stole mine. Can I pick his?
Stellar win.
Wow.
For me.
Interesting. Not playing at all.
Not playing. No. She beats me, I lose.
I'm just gonna piggyback on the Abel Tasman.
That's an A horse for me, but I'll let you guys keep going in the order we're going.
To me, I think that the biggest question, my first big question of this race is Mario Gutierrez, Champagne Room from the rail. He's just going to dead send, right? Please tell me yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And having said that, I don't think it matters. I'm kind of tipping my hand a little bit.
Yeah, go.
Here.
You continue and give your pick.
Yeah, I have to be honest. As far as this little sort of game draft that we're doing here, I'm thrilled because all my top picks, I get them all from Friday anyway. I'm going with Paradise Woods. I kind of feel like she is. I think she's just naturally faster than Champagne Room is. Champagne Room, in order for her, look, I agree. I think Mario's got one job you got to send. You got to hustle her out of there. Having said that, I just don't think she's as fast as Paradise Woods is early on, and I have no defense for the Kentucky Oaks. Okay, they went way too fast. I get it.
It was weird ground, too. Remember that
it was
ground?
very, very wet, and, there was biases, and then that kind of debunked it, all sorts of different stuff. But the Del Mar race, that's the one I don't understand. Everyone's saying, well, she needs to prove that she can run at Del Mar. I get that. She's only run there one time. Keep in mind, it was off of a long layoff, and she bobbled really badly, and she was taken out of her element. I think at this point now, Richard Mandela, Flavian Pratt, everyone knows what her game is. Go. Speed is your friend. And you know what? The one thing I love about her that I don't love really about anybody else in this field, I've got 2 105-plus buyers in my back pocket from 6 lifetime starts. Give me another horse that has 2 105-plus buyers. I don't think there is one. Maybe Stellar Win, but I think she's only got 1. I just feel like if she can clear, I think it's going to be really tough to run her down.
Can she sit and produce the kind of finish she's going to need to? Because I think that's what's going to have to happen. If I thought she was going to be loose, I don't think I could bet against her, or at least I think it might push this into a pass situation for me.
Put it this way. If she's sitting, I'm not happy.
You just want her to dead cent.
Go. I don't think Champagne Room is naturally that fast.
Interesting. All right, that's a good...
Or naturally that good.
Fair.
You're getting crossed off holiday card lists left and right, JK, from people we like, too. I don't know about you sometimes. My pick in the race is Elate. I love all the stories, all the judges of Horseflesh I've heard have talked about how she just continues to come on. I love that quote from early in the year by Bill Mott when she was, maybe at least in theory, a little disappointing. As early as April, he was talking about how she was less of a Kentucky Oaks filly and more of an Alabama filly, and just the idea that she's progressed since then to the Beldame and now to here. I feel like if Paradise Woods can get just enough company on the front end, we know Elate's got the finish. We know she's got the talent. Bill Mott's won this race 87 times. I'm in Elate's camp. What about you, JK?
I have 4 aces. I'm really excited about maybe picking Paradise Woods because she's a more fun story to tell. So I'm going to piggyback Matt's opinion real quick because there's something about her that I like a lot, and that's that her race in the Santa Anita Oaks, that was real. And I think people don't get that. The second place finisher was Abel Tasman, who went on to win, 3 Grade 1s. Mm-hmm. The third place finisher was It Tiswell, who went on to win, another Grade 1 or 2?
Yep.
That was a real race, and the number that she ran was real, and I think she can run back to that number. And so she's an A-horse for me, absolutely. For the sake of the conversation, I had 2 more A-horses left, Abel Tasman and Forever Unbridled. Forever Unbridled, closing into that slow pace in Songbird. But for the sake of the game, since both of you guys didn't like Abel Tasman, I'm going to pick her for the contest.
You jerk. I love it.
Here's the thing with Abel Tasman. We talked about it, Pete, when she first got switched, that I had an issue with how she was going to be trained as a horse that comes from off of it, with now going to Baffert's barn, who all of his horses are trained to be forwardly placed on the pace, kind of like Todd Pletcher's, so on and so forth. I was wondering what was going to happen there. And what I think has happened is the way that she's been trained has affected the way that it's kind of the reason she's doing this middle move business.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to let her roll a little bit. She's going to be forwardly placed, not like first, second, or, she's going to be, go on with it a little bit, not the last, last her winning the Kentucky Oaks, swinging the field. And I think she's dangerous. I think she's very dangerous. I think she can win. And so, like I said, I'm using 4 A horses in here. Abel Tasman, Elate, Forever Unbridled, and Paradise Woods. But for this, I'll pick Abel Tasman.
Forever Unbridled would be an A for me as well. Any other thoughts on this race, Matt, before we move on, as we've gotten 1 whole inning in the baseball game?
I was going to say, and it's been a gross inning, huh? No, I think Stellar Wind. I know Jonathan's fading her. I just feel like I don't love her, but I think she's got to be viewed on the short list of. Put it this way, she's far from a surprising result if she were to win. But I'm with you guys both on Forever Unbridled. I suppose it's a little bit of an interesting thing to note. Everyone talks about, Stellar Winds had a light campaign. Forever and Brighter's run twice. She's run twice in a year. I mean,
but I feel like it was more of the plan.
Oh, it was totally the plan. She's an ouchie unbridled song.
This with her.
Well, but no, it's not even so much that. It was more a matter of, I feel like for Stellar Wind, this has always been the plan. I'm not saying that it wasn't the plan for Forever and Bridal, but keep in mind, she had a serious injury after the Breeders' Cup where she needed to have surgery and she was laid up for 5 months. That's why it took so long to get back into it. And I think at that point, that's when the connections, I'm just, theorizing here, but I would go out on a limb and say, when they saw her win the way she won the Fleur-de-Lis, let's say, you know what, we'll get one more, we'll take a shot in a Grade 1, and then we'll get ready for the Breeders' Cup. And that's exactly what they did. They ran down a loose on the lead Songbird, and here we are. I think you have to use her in multis.
All right, let's go on to Saturday at this point. We'll start off with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Of course, the first race goes as the 4th. Whose turn is it?
I believe it's Jonathan's.
JK, you're going to lead us off here. Who are you selecting in this race?
I'd like to trade my first pick. I don't want the first pick in this
Last
race.
time you did this
kidding.
to me, you ended
I know.
up you eating my lunch. So go soak yourself and make a pick.
You mean last time? I want you to say it correctly. You need to honor the champ. Last time I did this, I won the Kenshin crown. That's what happened.
Oh man, he's out of control. He's out of control.
I like
Who
the
invited
Learning
this
Star.
guy? Go ahead.
I like the Learning Star. I think that I love the fact that she had those red running lines in Timeform US for her last race. They went really fast. That was a fast pace. Yes, the speed stayed on 1-2, but I think the speeds of that race were the two best horses. So I'm going to give her another shot. I talked to Paul Matisse the other day, and I don't want to take credit for what he said, but he said he felt like this was a race where what you've seen from these horses is not why you need to make your decision. You need to make a decision on what you think they're going to turn into. This is like a progressive type of race where it's not so much what's happened, but what's going to happen. And so I want to find someone other than the obvious Moonshine Memories and Separation of Powers and Heavenly Love. I want to find someone who I think can kind of sneak up and progress here. And for me, that's a Learning Star.
Matt, where are you here?
For many of the same reasons that Jonathan brought up, but he mentioned her as one of the, sort of the now Fillies. I think Heavenly Love has a ton of upside here, simply because I think a lot has been made about the whole Fig thing that day, where she and Geo Game ran the same day. Geo Game ran faster as far as the final time is concerned. The buyer was lighter, but in other Figs, Geo Game ran faster. I get all that. To me, it's the way that Heavenly Love won. She won with her ears pricked. I didn't think she ever got out of first gear. She, to me, just looks like the kind of filly that I won't be surprised at all if she takes a giant step forward, and then people go back and look at the whole Fig situation and go, oh, well, you know what? Maybe you do need to factor some things in from time to time. That's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But I think she's going to work out a beautiful trip in here, just in behind the speeds. She's versatile. I love everything about her. I like Heavenly Love.
I've been talked on to Heavenly Love. Our friend Sean Borman, who's very focused on late pace figures, has made a very compelling case for her that's won me over. I was left cold at first, but I definitely do see the case for Heavenly Love, and I might have picked her, but instead I'll just go with sort of the obvious one. I never want to be on the side of a bet fading Paul Matisse, but I'll just go with the one who looks the most obvious from what they've done on the track for me, and that's Moonshine Memories. I love the local form. The prototypical has done nothing wrong, and I think she should be an A. I mean, do either of you have a compelling reason really to bet against her, or are you just trying to be a little, fun?
No, I have no knock with her. She's certainly, for me, she's a stone cold A. She has no knock right now to me.
JK?
Yeah, I wouldn't advise anyone to not use her as an A horse.
Interesting that we have not really talked about Separation of Powers, who not posted very well, has the sort of two good races, bad race sandwiched in between, though you could make a pace excuse there. My bigger knock on her is more visual.
Oh my, I'm 100% with you.
I just took her forever. When she finally changed leads, she finished, but it was ugly, man. And I just I don't know, from the 13 post and the money she's going to take, I'm happy being against.
Put it this way, coming out of the Frisette, I want Caledonia Road. Not just because of the post. The post kind of like sealed the deal for Separation of Powers, but visually,
no, I agree.
She was just not impressive to me whatsoever. Caledonia Road, meanwhile, She was all out for about a half mile. And I say all out. It was a long, sustained bid, and she kept coming on. If you get a barbecue up front for some reason, I think she's going to finish. I think Caledonia Road is sneaky if you're looking for a big, big number.
Feels like one who could maybe sneak into the under side of the verticals. JK?
This reminds me of the Derby when, like, the horse I hate draws the rail. It's like, oh, come on. No, now no one's going to bet him. Like, I wanted her to draw the 4, the 5, or the 6 so she could take money. And now she's in the 13. She's going to drift up. I can't design the race where she doesn't go 3 wide on both turns, and she's not good enough to overcome that.
All right, let's move on to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. This is a funny race. I've sort of gone here and there and back again. My original thought, which is my thought now, once again, is that it looks like a match race between Lady Aurelia and Marcia. Who goes first here? Am I up?
You
I'm
bet,
gonna go.
Lito.
I'll go Marcia.
Wow.
I'll go Marcia. Here's the thing. Marcia beat her on the square in the Nunthorpe. This was a race that Lady Aurelia, by some reports, came out of. You know, it was fully extended. And you watch that tape. Marcia had the worst trip. And there's a lot of narrative around with even the trainer saying, oh, I don't know how Marcia's going to go around a bend. Go ahead and watch that tape of her. And granted, it was a long time ago running on wax in Ireland. I thought she made it around the left-hand bend just fine. I kind of like Marcia. I see no reason why, at the moment in the UK, she should be 5 times the price. I'm happy going with her. I'm not going to fade Lady Aurelia, but for our game, I'm going to pick Marcia.
I guess the question now is who goes second.
I think it's JK.
Damn.
Oh.
Well, actually, I want Matt to go first because I need to see if Master Marion won today because I didn't watch Del Mar.
Yeah, he did.
And he did win.
Yeah, he won.
Okay, I'll go.
I'll let you guys sort it out amongst yourselves at this point.
I'll take Lady Aurelia. The workout, she worked out with Master Marion the other day, and I tweeted, like, who was she working with? Because the horse was, like, sticking around. And obviously Master Marion was well meant, so I liked what Lady Aurelia did. I don't think anyone will argue that if you can, you know, in a circumstanceless situation, Lady Aurelia is going to win. But, you know, a lot of different crazy things can happen, and so I'm just going to go ahead and say that she should run well because she should get a good trip. If she does, she wins. But this race can get chaotic really fast. 5 furlongs is not very far.
JK sucking the chalk. Who would have thought? Matt, was that who you would have picked?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I looked at it more and more and just kind of felt like this is really what. Look, she's gone overseas and done unbelievable things. I mean, isn't this filly tailor-made for 5/8 of a mile here, going left-handed here in the States, over firm going? That to me is the biggest piece here. Boy, this is
Astros getting out of hand.
This is getting a little bit sloppy here. I just think she's way the horse to beat in here. The problem is after her, then who? I just think a statistical thing to keep in mind if you're looking at this race, outside posts going 5/8 at Del Mar, not good. Not good. It's not a positive to be breaking from out there. That's not rocket science. Doesn't take, I mean, generally going these turf sprints outside posts are less than ideal. Disco Partner has never gone this, he's gone 5 in the past, but not at this level. There's just a part of me that wonders if at this point in his career he's a little bit better, going a little bit longer, but I'm going to kind of just default to him. He was my second pick in here. I know he's capable of running races fast enough to win this. I just don't know if this is his trip. I think 5/8 might be a hair on the sharp side for him.
So you kind of see it as a match, or you see it all about Lady Aurelia on the square?
I do. I think if she, barring either just an obscene pace duel or her not getting out of the blocks, I think it's going to be very difficult for her to lose.
What do you guys make of this weird Ward quote the other day about how closers actually do better on the turf at Del Mar? Now, I don't play Del Mar the way that either of you guys do, but that when I was playing California, when I was playing Del Mar, that wasn't the world I lived in. Is this just weird trainer speak, or is there any signal to go with this noise, Matt?
I spoke with Mike Watchmaker earlier today, and he had brought that up where a couple of barns had even brought up. They said early in meets, speed does not hold on the turf.
Interesting.
And this is coming from Barnes, not from him. I guess it's just one of those things. To me, 5/8 of a mile is a different game. Guess what? Gas wins. Gas wins at 5/8. If she breaks, I think she wins.
JK, you've tripped a lot of races at Del Mar. What do you think about the track profile?
Oh, I mean, I think when you have how many grade one turf sprints do they run at Del Mar?
0.
0.
Well, you don't have quality speed up there. So you let someone loose and you try to come to him, and good luck with that.
All right, let's go on to the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. I wish my bet here could be an anti-bet as opposed to a pro-bet. We'll let Matt start off, though, this time.
I'm disappointed because I wanted to let Jonathan go because I shouldn't even say that because I don't even know if this is actually where he'd go. This race for me is the ultimate. This is with my heart and also with my head at the same time. I think they're the most underappreciated horse of the entire weekend is Highway Star. All she does is show up and run. Now, she's not the most naturally talented horse in this race. Obviously, Unique Bella probably takes that sort of throne or that kind of title. But Highway Star, all she does is go out there. And even with the exception of that last race where she was bet a little bit, look at the times that she's been sub 5-1. I mean, it was in a listed stake at Aqueduct in January, going way back. It was in a New York bred race. I mean, she's really, really good. I don't think she gets the credit she deserves. She may not be good enough to win this race, but I know she's going to try. And I have a feeling that that's more than I can say about some of the more high-profile outfits here, where if a couple of these girls don't get it their way, I don't think they're going to go on with it. I have a really, really bad feeling about Unique Bella. Bad meaning I don't trust her.
Yeah, well, if I had gone first and my pick could have been not Unique Bella at evens, that would have been my pick. JK, you go ahead.
We haven't talked about this. We all talk periodically outside of our media things, our shows and stuff. But I have you might be shocked. I tried to find something else. I wanted to fade Unique Bella, and I tried, and I thought, okay, Finley's Lucky Charm. They're gonna put her on the front. But she's not going to beat these horses going 7. I mean, Highway Star's going to catch her. All right. Constellation, first time Baffert. She's not good enough. By the Moon. Ooh. No, I can't get that. Okay, all right. Find a City. She's not been running well. Curlin's Approval. We're not in Florida. And the 2 other fillies drew inside. So, I really don't know what else to do. I mean, I have to pick.
You're sucking the chalk again.
I honestly believe
unreal
that and the draw outside is perfect for her. She's a monster. She's gonna just lope around there. And you talk about tripping Del Mar in the past. That 3 wide, 4 wide, 3 wide outside, on the pace trip is perfect there. I don't want to pick her. I seriously want to try to do something else, but I honestly can't pick anyone with any confidence.
She could win. I make her, 5-2, 3-1 in the race.
I made her 4. That's probably not giving her enough credit.
No, but it's not. It doesn't sound crazy to me. But even at 4, she's among the most likely winners. She's gonna be evens, and that means for the win pool anyway, she's got to be faded for me.
And let me say this too, and this was not the deciding factor, but this didn't hurt. I respect Richie Migliori's opinion. I think that a guy who sat on a bunch of these things that we're betting on probably knows a little bit more than the rest of us. And he said some pretty strong words. He said this might be. He didn't just say that this isn't as good as a horse could work. He said this might be the best work he's ever seen from a horse.
That's pretty high praise.
I think she's that good, and I wanted to try to get cute. And I'm not going to be heavily involved in this race. Don't get me wrong. Thank God it's not in any, in the pick 6 sequence or anything like that. But I think she's probably going to win.
Give credit where credit's due. That Richie quote came on the Steve Bick at the Races show. He's been providing unbelievable content as always, as he does year round, but especially around Breeders' Cup time. You can check out all his stuff. SteveBick.com. You can subscribe on iTunes. I like him so much, I'm going to get up early tomorrow and go out and see him over there in the press box at Del Mar. But I did hear that Richie interview, and you do make a good point. I'm going to go, for me, there's 4 horses left I could still pick, and I'm going to go with the one who has the deepest connection to the podcast, because I'm sure, Matt, as a normal human, you don't remember this, but I happen to remember on the very first DRF podcast ever, probably the first horse I ever tipped on the DRF Players Podcast, I'm guessing it was in the Frisette, back in whatever year that would have been, 2000.
By the Moon?
By the Moon, baby.
Wow.
And, last time, in a sense, she was flattered, but in another sense, they gave her the lead, she took the lead, she was still the best closer. That's why that race was over.
Yeah.
She doesn't, it's not like that's the way she needs to win. This filly can finish, and she can sit close, and she can finish. And that's what it might take to win this race. 12-1 in the morning line, that's too big. Give me By the Moon.
Look, all she does is show up and run. I can't knock a horse like that. I agree with you. I mean, look, that last race was just the most that's probably going to be the most head-scratching, puzzling race of 2017, watching it be run, where I'm looking at, I think Jose Ortiz is probably, if he's not the best, oh, boy, that's a gopher ball.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Look at this.
Astros on with
By the way, George Springer's going to be the MVP of the series. I mean, he has to be, doesn't he?
This is unreal.
He's hit, 4 home runs?
We got to check in. Text our friends in Houston,
It's
JK.
5-0.
See
What's
how they're
Tamaro
doing.
saying right now? He's got to be losing his mind. 5-0.
Oh, man.
I mean, is Darvish really not going to get out of the second inning again?
He looks, I mean, he's obviously got nothing.
I'm ahead of you. I'm ahead of you guys, and they're coming for him.
He got the hook? Unbelievable, man.
Yeah,
Incredible.
No, they
But you know what, though? If this series has showed us anything, this thing's far from over.
That's
We got
true.
a lot of baseball left to play.
After the other night, when I felt like Mr. Wise Guy getting 1-4 on Kershaw up 4-0. I
Oh, really?
I was counting my money.
Oh, no.
I was like, oh, look at this guy I just took advantage of. 5 hours later, I was, licking my wounds. Anyway.
George Springer went to, fun fact, he went to the University of Connecticut, and he also went to Avon Old Farms. That's where he played his high school ball, right down the road from where I grew up in Western
Very cool.
Massachusetts. And I have to say hello to my mother. She's listening to us right now.
Oh, fantastic. Hi, Mom.
Old Farms, they have thoroughbreds there?
Stop. Just because farms is in the name doesn't mean that,
There
doesn't
are
mean they gotta
other
be
kinds
racing
of
horses.
farms. There are other kinds of farms, JK. All right, I think that brings us to the final race where I have to lead the discussion for, which is a beautiful thing as far as I'm concerned. The Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. I've once again lost track of who goes first. It's either me or JK. Who is it here?
Jonathan,
I just went. Maybe it's me because I didn't go first last time.
All right, we're going to go with you.
I'm very excited. This is a stronger opinion of the situation. Lady Eli, of course, all she does is get first or second. I am very excited to bet Grand Jeté. I think it's fascinating that Grand Jeté was second choice to DeCita when DeCita won the Beverly D, and then she was first choice. She was bet over DeCita when DeCita won, and then she comes back and she was bet over the Beverly D winner in the Flower Bowl. They're betting this horse like we're missing something. And then she got a silly ride by Javier. Don't get me wrong. I can't knock his aggression, but it was too cute.
Jockey's dilemma. Jockey's dilemma.
I get it. I won't knock it. Like I've said before, we talk about it all the time. I find that to be very hypocritical to complain about,
It was maybe too clever by half. I think it's fair to say that it was maybe too clever by half.
Exactly. And I think Grand Jeté is sitting on a big one. I think that if she's going to get the right situation here, I think Chad probably had something to do with this race getting run at 1 mile and an eighth, because I think it fits him, it fits her and Lady Eli perfectly. I joke, of course, about Chad being involved in the mile and eighth deal. But, Grand Jeté for me.
Fair enough. For me, I had a very strong opinion of this race that got completely messed up by the draw.
Uh-oh.
I was
I know where you're going.
Extremely eager to bet Rhododendron.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. There's been some negativity out about this horse, but I really don't know why, okay? So you've got, obviously, French Oaks. She bled in there. Okay, so right away I'm thinking bleeder. Can't wait to see what she does on Lasix. She came back. Everything said she was going to be short in the matron on Irish Champions Weekend. Mm-hmm. She has a trip from absolute horror trip, still runs pretty well despite being short and a terrible trip, and then goes ahead and beats the first string in the Opera. I think she's progressive. I think she's going to love the conditions. I think that Ryan Moore's going to have to work out a trip, but we were in the situation a few years ago with a horse called Hit It a Bomb with an impossible post and Ryan Moore at Keeneland, and instead of 5-2, we got 5-1. So, you know what? Instead of 3-1, maybe we get 6-1 on Rhododendron. I'm going to go ahead. In Ryan Moore, I trust. I'm going to go ahead and pick her.
I like it. I think she fits in here beautifully. The interesting thing is, like you say, the post is brutal. It's no bargain. The only thing I'll say, too, we talk about post positions and statistics and things like that. Oddly enough, I'll have to go back into internal and take a look. The inside two posts going 9 furlongs at Del Mar, not that this affects any of our picks right now, mainly it affects Warflag and Senga. There's something terrible, like 1 for 80
So weird.
And I wonder if it's just that little dog leg to the left where everyone's trying to come over.
Maybe,
and then you go into the first turn. Again, I've got to look at the numbers to find out exactly what it is. But
crazy.
The inside two posts coming out of the chute are terrible. But back to your filly, Rhododendron. I'm also going to go with the 3-year-old filly. So I think it's odd enough that none of us are taking Lady Eli. But I think we all acknowledge that she's probably the most likely winner of the race.
Oh, she's great.
I'm fascinated by Wuheda. We need to figure out how to pronounce her name because
that sounds good.
I heard from Larry Colmus earlier today. He said it was Wuheda, but Nick Luck told me he had heard Wuheda. So we need to find that out in the next
Those are
48 hours.
Two men that I trust implicitly when it comes to pronunciation. So if they're at odds, I don't know what to do.
And you know what the funniest thing, too, was? We found a replay in the trailer today, and they started playing it. It was an Australian caller.
You can't trust that.
And Nick immediately goes, it's an Australian guy. You can't trust the caller.
Whoa, hey there!
Yeah, you can't trust it. You have no idea how it's actually supposed to be pronounced. The thing with this filly, she's another 3-year-old, similar to Rhododendron. Nick brought it up earlier today because I asked him a question about her. As a 2-year-old, they thought that she was going to be something special, where the way that she looked out there, she looked like she was going to be the goods. Then, unfortunately, she had a fracture to one of her hind legs. Took some time to get her back to the races. The big thing for me, I go back and watch that opera. I thought she was really loaded for bear and ready to fire a giant shot. And just at the end, there was no finish. To me, and maybe I'm just trying to be optimistic here, I think a lot of it has to do with the ground. You look at her last 3 runs, they've come on yielding, soft. Her first 3 runs came on good to firm, and good to firm. I think she's going to love feeling that rock-hard turf course down here at Del Mar. I think it's going to go a long, long way. She gets the Lasix. I know she was supposed to run in the QE2 at Keeneland a few weeks ago. She developed a corn on one of her feet. It sounds like all is clear, all is good to go. William Buick, this would be a fantastic story if after that terrible, terrible injury out at Arlington over the summer, he comes back, he gets his first Breeders' Cup win. I think Wuheda is really, really interesting at a bit of a number. I don't know what she's going to be. And Pete, you know more about this than I do. I talked to Watch earlier today. He seems to think she's going to be every bit of the 20. I think she's going to be closer to a low teen.
Yeah, she's shorter than 20s in the UK books, but man, if she's 20s on the morning line, that's just too big. I didn't like her. I didn't love missing the race, and I felt like, Rhododendron had much more reason to improve. She's run against some really good ones, though, and she's been close up. So if you want to give me double-digit odds on her, I'm very happy to throw her in. Another one who I think is just sort of unexposed and interesting and could excel under USA conditions is Senga. She has the win in the French Oaks was pretty impressive, and since then she's caught the soft ground, which I don't think she likes one bit, which makes perfect sense given her breeding. Pascal Barry, obviously a tremendous record at the Breeders' Cup with 6 perfections and Dome Driver, and I think he had another winner as well, who I'm spacing on. But anyway, I'm very interested in the likes of Wuheda and Senga as sort of in that situation where you're going to spread. Those are ones I would want to throw in here. JK, why don't you give us your some more thoughts on this race, especially Lady Eli? We can't give her short shrift.
Yeah, well, I got 3 things. One, you teased me again because you went pretty
good.
Thought you were going to go.
I'm rewatching all of Curb, so I got the Larry David in me. What can I tell you?
It's amazing. Okay, so there's 2 horses I want to talk about. Like you said, Lady Eli, and I have a negative opinion on a horse as well. Lady Eli, I mean, you just can't really knock her, right? I mean, I went through her PP today, and I was like, I for some reason I thought she had like this lull where she wasn't very good.
That never happened.
And I forgot. I know. I really, my mind had told me that because she ran second a couple times, and I was like ready to dismiss her in my mind. But she's won 13 times, and she's won 10 and been second 3 times. I mean, she is remarkable. She's got so much courage. She tries so hard. It's 1 1/8 miles, which I think is probably her ideal distance. It's on firm surface, where she's run huge twice in her career in California. And I just think she's going to run well here today or Friday. Saturday again. My negative tip is a horse I think a lot of people are going to use when they start to have the conversation about there's not very much pace. And I think that Avenge is a little bit of a facade. I think that you think you want her because you think she's going to be loose. but I think she's good going long or going 1.25 miles, 1 mile and 3/8. I think that's the looseness for her that I think is good. Because what's going to happen here, she's not going to go be loose and open up. She's going to be loose and be clear by 1.5 or 2, and it's going to be that jockey's dilemma we talk about all the time. And there's going to be way too many horses that quicken more than she does, that have a better late kick, who have more stamina. They're going to be too close, and they're going to outfinish her, and it's just not going to be the same result. I just think she's going to be a little bit wise guyish on the pace front, and she's the type of horse that I won't have on a ticket.
I love that analysis, and I think it was very well put about sort of the difference between horses who gallop along and horses who quicken. And I'll just piggyback on with another anti, and it hurts me to say it out loud because I loved her so much last year and she came through. But I just think Queen's Trust, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, she's off form. You know what? Her races haven't been that bad. She ran huge at Ascot. You know, that was a slow pace. She was making good ground late. I still think she's good, but I think the 1.8 miles just slays what she wants to do. I think she needed that race to fall apart last year. She needed the extra ground. I don't think she's a 9 furlong filly. I'm against her here.
Yeah, that was my biggest concern, the distance. I'm just not entirely convinced that she's going to adore this trip. I think it's going to be a little bit sharp for her. And again, that's kind of why I feel like this race this year, and it's silly for me to say this because I'm picking a European horse, I feel like this race of all years, boy, does it play and cater to the Americans more, I think, than the Europeans, because we even saw where roly-poly, as opposed to running in this race, they're going to try her in the mile, where I feel like, and I'm not just saying this because I listened to you and Nick and
Ron Wood.
Thank you, Ron Wood, yesterday before I got on the airplane and headed out this way. Not just saying this, I agreed that the idea that roly-poly at 10, boy, that would have been too much. But at 9, I feel like this would have been just absolutely right between the eyes. And real quick, I misspoke. It's not the inside 2 posts. It is the inside post. If you go back to 2010 at Del Mar, breaking from the chute at 9 furlongs, the inside post is 2 for 73. It's not a small sample size, and I don't know if it's just a weird thing or not, because you go back years prior to that, it's not quite as bad, but 2 for 73 is 2 for 73.
I'd love to see who the winners were. I'd love to see if you can clear, if you could see like a pure EP horse, a pure, Kieran Points 8 type horse.
I just wanted to
changes it.
Clean that up a little bit, where I was off with the 2 posts. 2 posts isn't bad, 15%, but 2 for 73 with the 1 post from 2010 on.
All right, I'm happy now, Matt, to turn this over to you. Before we do that, I am going to bother producer Craig. Do we have any more of those adult beverages? I'd like one, please. I think I earned it. You go ahead, Matt.
All right, we're going to spin this thing off now. Races 8 through 12. We'll wrap things up here. Let's go on to I'm in the wrong race. It's going to make things very difficult here. Hang on. Stand by.
I think we're looking at the sprint.
We are. We're looking at the sprint, and obviously everyone's going to be looking at Dreyfong. He's the reigning champion of this race. Who is up first? Who's batting leadoff for this pick? Do we remember?
I haven't gone in a while.
You haven't gone in a while.
It could be. Not that I want to go in this race, but I could go.
Well, all right. I mean, I thought you were jonesing to get it out there that you loved somebody in here. Go ahead, Pete.
All right, we'll take a look. Jeez, boy, this is a race where I think my main opinion, once again, is not that Dreyfong can't win, but that Dreyfong might just be too short relative to his actual chance of winning. So that makes me want to go in another direction, and I've spoken so much about how I'm leery of horses who don't have California speed and have excelled in California races in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And so that leaves me choosing between Roy H. and Ransom the Moon. And you know what? And I hope JK doesn't get mad at me for this. Just at the prices,
oh no,
I'm going to go at Ransom the Moon.
Oh no.
I'm going to take Ransom the Moon.
Dirty.
Sorry, gentlemen.
Is I was gonna, you know what my final thought was going to be, Pete? My final thought was going to be, hey guys, tomorrow morning if you're going to the track, I think I got a little hookup for you to get into the breakfast marquee. Pamplemousse is catering it. I had bacon there the other day. It's the best bacon I've ever had. The hookup has been revoked. Matt's a superstar. He could probably get in, but you've got no shot now.
Well, if you couldn't tell, clearly Jonathan had a horse in mind. I only know this because he and I talked a few days ago. But JK, have at it now that your boy is gone. Where are you going to go?
I like Ransom the Moon too, and here's the reason: is like Pete said, we've talked about West Coast speed. We learned our lesson about West Coast speed. Well, what about a West Coast 6 furlong closer? I'm really excited about Ransom the Moon. I think we can dig up some excuses for why he ran so poorly last time. I think he'll run better this time. Give my pick. The other 2 horses I'm really excited about betting in the Breeders' Cup happen to be in this race, one being Imperial Hint, but I'm going to give you American Pastime. I thought American Pastime's race 2 back at Del Mar was super impressive. Had a little bit of a slow start last time in the Gallant Bob. He's a 3-year-old. You can expect a little bit of an improvement. And I've raved on the podcast before about how good I think Kit Sormo is when he's got his mind on riding. And I never, ever get disappointed when I see him on a horse that I like. And I look for him to put this horse in a good position. I wish we were actually
I was going to say, Jonathan, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, son.
Oh, Lee, I just looked down and saw that.
Not that Corey Nakatani is a bad rider. We're not saying that at all. But Kenty D chose my pick. Go on, Jonathan. I'll let you finish first.
What's funny is, and I don't like your pick, and I'm looking forward to following that up. But no, I like American Pastime. 3-year-old progressing. 3-year-olds do well in this race, and I think that this horse has got a little bit more to offer, and a win over the track. It's one of the things we haven't talked about, but I think it's worth mentioning. I mentioned it on the pod. I'm nervous about one of these races just being completely random because of the track. I do know that American Pastime likes this surface, and so that's going to be my top.
He looks like a Breeders' Cup Sprint winner. If you go back and you look at the PPs, we've seen a lot of 3-year-olds to step up and do well here, and I get it, and I want American Pastime on my tickets. But Matt, what direction were you going to go here?
Yeah, I mean, I picked Roy H on top, and I understand maybe some people are looking at it, and Jonathan and I talked about it the other day with the whole Ransom the Moon thing. I feel like that was a stone cold prep for Ransom the Moon, and maybe that's just trying to be optimistic because he didn't really do any running. But at the same time, Roy H, maybe they just wanted to get a grade 1 into him, but at the same time, he's a gelding. It's not like you're doing anything for stud value. He's out there to run races. To me, I think the gelding process completely changed this horse. I think it absolutely woke him up. He came back off that long layoff going down the hill. Then it got washed off, and that may have been a blessing in disguise because once it got washed off, he ran that giant race on the dirt and non-winners of 2 other than, and then they shipped him to New York, and he's been on an absolute tear. I maintain if he doesn't get cleaned out by Dreyfong, he wins the Bing Crosby. Ransom the Moon had just the dream.
It was a perfect trip.
And
I'll
guess
acknowledge
what?
that.
I had him that day. I had Ransom the Moon, so I'm not complaining about it. It worked out very well. But to me, just Roy H has the ability to go to the lead. He has the ability to sit just off. I think Dreyfong's going to go. I think Roy H glues himself to his flank. And I just think that Roy H might be the now horse. That's just my feeling.
I hear you. I mean, I was torn between Roy H and Ransom the Moon and just went for Ransom the Moon based on, I understand it was an aided by Dreyfong as his
Still a
lead
good race,
blocker
though.
win, but, he's going to be 3 times the price. And I don't want to give total short shrift to Imperial Hint before we leave this race, but what else you got, JK?
Well, here's my knock on Roy H, okay? In his last races, the True North, he sat off of Chief Lion, Holy Boss, Green Grotto. Those are the horses that he sat off of, okay? And then in the race that you're talking about with Dreyfong, he sat off of Mo Candy. And then
but he's not a speed horse.
Santa Anita Sprint,
he's a finish.
But I guess that was the thing for me is that he won that race basically in a running style that he doesn't really want. He doesn't want to be pushing the pace. He wants to be sitting.
I see it the same way. It's a knock. It's a knock to me. I get what you're saying, JK, about if you're a speed horse dueling with crud. I don't mean to be mean about these horses. I shouldn't say crud. If you're dealing with dueling with subpar horses, and that's how you're winning, just sort of hanging on. But I think he's got more finish than you think he has.
It's just too much blue for me. Too much blue. We talk about that all the time. In time form, U.S. The pace figures they code in blue if it was slower, if it was considered a slow pace. Just too much blue for me.
What do you make of Imperial Hint?
Oh, I think he's super live. I say this all the time. And I actually, someone texted me the other day when they knew I was at Del Mar and said, how do they look out there? I was like, I don't know. They all got 4 legs, and they look. I'm not a judge of horse flesh. I don't know what I'm looking at, but I will tell you this: one horse that stood out to me, just looking like he meant business, was Imperial Hint. The exercise rider was like water skiing on this horse. Like, I mean, he was standing up, and then he worked well. I mean, and I think he's legit. So he's definitely an A for me. I'm excited. I'm telling you right now, when this race is over, find a leaderboard for the BCBC. Just find one.
This was a good race for you in the BCBC a few years ago, Matt, as I recall.
It certainly was, yeah. Work all week.
Find a leaderboard, and if Imperial Hint, Ransom the Moon, or American Pastime win this race, your boy's name might be up there kind of high.
Interesting.
Sidebar. Did you think I thought we would see Kershaw tonight? I didn't think it would be the third inning.
I think they just figure he's got all winter to rest. You know, it's like desperation mode.
Empty the tank right now.
Yeah,
and you. I mean, look. Sorry, Jonathan.
Don't start talking bad about my guy from Dallas now.
No. Look, I think you had to go to. He's the best pitcher of this generation.
Me the other night. He crushed me the other night.
I mean, and by the way, Brandon Morrow, who's going to pitch tonight, he will be. I think they had said the first pitcher in history to pitch in all 7 games of a World Series.
That's amazing.
Think about that. He would pitch in 7 games.
That's pretty cool.
Every one of them. He's throwing 98 miles an hour.
Yeah, I've always liked Morrow. He's a cool pitcher.
Imperial Hint, though, you guys brought it up.
I want to hear your thoughts.
I'm curious. The only reservation I have, and we've heard through the grapevine that Bob Affer is very concerned about this horse above anyone else. Imperial Hint. Apparently, he's a little peanut of a thing. He's not very big. I didn't know that until this afternoon. You guys always talk about it, and I agree 100%. I generally look at dirt races and say the West Coast dirt horses are better than the East Coast ones, and the East Coast turf horses are better than the West Coast turf horses. Why is this horse different? Why is he going to buck the trend? I'm not trying to be combative. I'm curious.
No, it's a great question, and I think it's why that even though both of us like him, that neither of us picked him. But I think it's just we have seen it before, even out here. I mean, a horse like Work All Week was just a horse who'd shown talent in the form of figures and looked progressive and looked like he might be sitting on a race. I see a little bit of that with this horse.
That's fair.
The only way I'm going to be able to bet this race, though, and the more we talk about it, the more I realize, the only way I'm going to be able to bet this race in a way that makes any sense is to fade Dreyfong. I may end up regretting that, and I'm not going to tie my whole day up in this, but I think I got to go with these more interesting horses and just try to beat Dreyfong. It's the only way I'm going to be able to have a bet here.
The thing about Imperial Hint that I think is important to keep in mind when you're talking about that theory of West and East and Tupac and Biggie is that it's when the East Coast horse is bet over the top, like last year AP Indian. The horse was bet I don't know. I think was he the favorite or the second choice?
Second choice, I believe.
He was actually a little cool on the board.
Because I believe Masochistic was the favorite, wasn't
he? Yeah, I think he took all of them.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's just I think that's the comparison that I think Imperial Hint's going to get bet. I've heard way too many smart people tell me they like him, and I think he ends up probably going off as the second choice.
Do you put any stock into the idea that just looking at his PPs at face value, I think the only name really worthwhile on there is Stall Walking Dude? Is there any concern that he's doing this against inferior competition, and now when he's got real horses he's running against, that it's just not going to be the same thing?
That's definitely
I'm a big believer in and Pete and I have talked about this before. I'm a believer in who did they run against, but I'm also a believer in what did they stop the clock in. And this horse has run. He has a 131 time form US and a 127 and a 125. I mean, the horse is running fast. Figures can be wrong from time to time, but they're not just consistently wrong about a horse. And this horse can run, and so I don't care who he's running. He could be running against me, you, and Pete in a horse suit. If he's running 131s consistently and 127s, then he's got my attention.
He is certainly talented, and it wouldn't be a shock at all based on his page. I mean, look, just like you say, from a figure standpoint, if you're a figure player, you have to be using Imperial Hint. If you're a class player, you're probably going the opposite direction. But boy, from a speed figure standpoint, he makes all the sense in the world. Let's move on to race number 9, the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Mile, obviously contested at a mile. I think you can go a number of ways in here. Am I up now?
I think it's you.
Is it my pick now? Or okay. Go ahead. Were you saying something, Jonathan?
You think it's you?
No, I didn't say anything. Maybe I just no. I didn't say anything. I was just probably breathing heavy.
I almost wish I wasn't going first in this spot, just simply because I think my horse will still be there come pick number 3. But neither here nor there. I'm going to go with the European import, and I'm going to go try and make the same sort of case that I made for Wuheda for Zelzal. Zelzal is a horse I think getting back to the firm going is going to be absolutely crucial for this horse. Jean-Claude Rouget's numbers in North America, not fantastic, but at the same time, obviously, he's a capable trainer. I'm not worried about that. His 2 group victories have come over firm ground over there. That most recent start, a very similar situation to what I felt like with Wuheda. Made this big, bold move, loomed up, and then just kind of had nothing down the lane. I personally like these horses that are going to go his second start off the bench. He gets Lasix, and he gets back out probably to his preferred trip at a mile. He's 20 on the line. I made him 6. Maybe I'm overrating his chances here. I think the last time I saw an odds checker, he was in that sort of 12, 13 range. I think Zelzal is very interesting, especially with the amount of speed signed on in this race.
I mean, I get it. The Ferret is a great historical prep for this race. I can't get over the no finish, though.
Okay.
It was too hangy for me. And you make a good point. It could have been about the ground. It's one of the hardest things about evaluating these European shippers because it's such a different game over here. I certainly can't knock, between the connections and the price. I wouldn't tell you were crazy at all, and I would certainly have a wide spread where I would put him in. But for me, I couldn't do more than that just off the impression he left me on the tape.
That's fair, and you know what? That's the thing. Like you said, it's so difficult to tell with these Euros, or any horse really for that matter on turf. Is it a matter of them really getting tired at the end because of the bog, or did they just completely lack any finish? I'm willing to gamble that it was more about the ground, off of a little bit of a layoff. Now you get the Lasix, and again, I can't stress enough, I think this thing is going to be a barbecue up front.
Yeah, it does look like there's a lot of pace. Who's next, me or JK?
I'll let you guys figure that out.
I've got a long shot and I've got a favorite, so you pick. You want
my long shot's going to still be there.
So you want me to go and pick my shorter one?
Yeah. I mean, well, if you might pick the same long shot as me, so yeah, you pick your shorter.
I'm going to be upset if you pick my long shot, and you probably will. All right, let's go ahead and lay it down and pick Ribchester. I just think he's got the best form in the race. I get it. It's an afterthought. Sometimes these afterthought horses come over here, and it's like Celebration a few years ago, and they just they're just not, they're over the top and they can't do it. But I just feel like Ribchester is really suited to American racing. I think he's got, and I also think he's got the right amount of speed. He's fast, but I don't think he needs to go and cook himself. I think he'll actually relax off of that other speed and pounce. I think this could be a nice stalk and pounce situation with a horse with the best form ratings in the race. I think he could do something special here, and I think there's enough superficial reasons to be against him that you might get 3-1 or 7-2 on a horse who, on like the bare form, should be more like 9-5. I'm going to go ahead and pick Ribchester.
Jonathan, where are you going?
Did we lose you, Jonathan?
Pete, I got a question.
You have a mute problem.
I don't really remember. I was involved, but I wasn't following. Am I not there?
No, you're
good.
No,
you're back.
You guys got me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm cutting out a little bit. I have a question. So, Pete, how good was Toronado?
I think Toronado was all right.
Not as good as Ribchester?
No, I don't think so. Form rating wise. Okay. I think you're talking about a 120s horse versus like a 130s horse.
Toronado also got an absolutely ridiculous ride. Don't forget that. He was out there on the Chooch that day contesting it for some reason. I don't know why. And I'm bitter because I picked him that day.
For some reason,
I need to look on time for him and sort this out. But
I just remember someone pointing out to me that those forwardly placed European horses in a mile races, sometimes they get a rude awakening when they get over here and we're going a little bit of a quicker clip.
You got to be able to sit.
Yeah,
you got to be able to sit and finish. But I think he can do that.
Am I at a line, Jonathan? I don't want to cut you off. I'm just curious. Well, first, what do you think of Ribchester?
I think he's a good horse. I think that if you're running in the mile races in the UK, at Ascot and everywhere, and you're a premier horse to the mile horses we have over here, especially because there's no Wise Dan, there's no Tepin, right? I mean, World Approval is carrying our American flag.
Yeah, how much better is he than Lancaster Bomber? Lancaster Bomber's 40-1 against Ribchester. Last time. Granted, ground and other things play into it.
It's a good time.
But
I guess this is a good time for me to tell you that I'm picking Lancaster Bomber.
No, I don't mind Lancaster Bomber in the race. I really don't, because there are these reasons to bet against Ribchester, and I'd rather have Lancaster Bomber than World Approval. For me, I don't hate the horse at all.
It's a math thing for me. I'm just telling you, go to YouTube right now, or you can pause it. We've done this before. Pause it. Go to YouTube.
We'll wait.
Watch World Approval versus Lancaster Bomber. Watch the differences in the trip. Okay, we'll wait. Okay, now you're back. You tell me that you want to take World Approval as the second choice or possibly even the favorite when you can have 10 times that on Lancaster Bomber off of that trip. Give me Lancaster Bomber. He was wide all the way around there.
And got
World
stopped.
Approval saved all that ground on the inside. Yeah, give me Lancaster Bomber. On a firm surface, in which he's clearly wants. He runs well on Lasix. They brought him back over here. Please give me Lancaster Bomber.
I completely hear you. And my only point is, if there was no Ribchester in the race, Lancaster Bomber might be my top pick. But I just, take a step back and just look at form and wisdom of crowds and things. You're making a great case about Lancaster Bomber being equal with World Approval, and then they ran in the same race last time, Lancaster Bomber and Ribchester's 2-1 and Lancaster Bomber's 40-1. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's a reason not to bet Lancaster, but I'm just saying that's how that's the potential edge that Ribchester has, because that was not on Ribchester's ground either.
As a person who's trying to talk down your horse that I'm using as an A horse, so bear with me here. My point being is that, because to me Ribchester would be a single if I felt that confident about him, right? Because you're right, he is the class.
If the Breeders' Cup Mile had been Ribchester's goal all year, he would be a single, and he is not that, and that's why I think we're going to get, like I said, 3-1, 7-2 instead of 9-5.
But Tom, we talked about this before. I mean, I don't know a lot about what goes on over there, but I do know for sure that I read somewhere the plan was Champions Day, come back in 2 weeks. They said that originally, but then they kind of wavered from it. But then they ended up doing it anyway.
Yeah. It's hard.
It was the plan that wasn't the plan that was the plan.
Right. It's so tricky over there with the foreign racing, meaning our racing and Asia. It's all kind of an afterthought, and it makes it tricky to evaluate.
Am I going just completely the wrong direction in trying to make the argument, and this is my case, whether it's right or wrong, we'll find out, that he's going the wrong way? It's been a long campaign.
It's been a long campaign, and that could be, again, Acceleration comes to mind as one who was just cooked by the end of it. But I just think he hasn't got his ground since the Queen Anne.
Okay, fair enough. So you think that was why? Because I didn't like how drifty he was. It seemed like he was leaning out in that most recent start. And I have to be honest, Persuasive is a fine filly, don't get me wrong, but she's no world beater. And I didn't really think he put up any sort of challenge with her. He stayed on, but she ran right by him.
She ran awesome. That was, that was definitely like her last race. She was laid out for it. Her form's pretty good before.
It's not bad. Yeah, absolutely. Don't get me wrong.
But nothing you're saying is wrong. I just think he's going to do better on firm, and he's still, he just doesn't run bad races.
Yeah, fair enough. I can't argue with that.
I knocked the horse a horse for me, though. I knocked Ribchester, but he's an A. Matt, you're knocking him. Is he an A for you, or is he a no use?
No, I would use him, but I don't know that he's necessarily an A. He's just, to me, he's the kind of horse. And I guess this is the other thing, too. We talked about it a little bit earlier in one of our meetings, that the Americans have actually had a pretty good record in this mile race, whereas some of these highly fancied and highly thought of Euros have come over here and bombed. Not just using Toronado as the example, but Acceleration, who was, like you say, at that point he was just over the top at that stage in his campaign. I would use him, but I don't know that he's one of those horses that, I put it this way: him winning isn't going to be the difference between me having a giant Breeders' Cup or not. Him losing could actually be the difference that allows me to have a big Breeders' Cup or not. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's fair, and I'm not singling. I know it's a little crazy because Sudoise ran him down like he was glued to the 8th pole, but how about Ballaroc's at $1 million?
I think he's sneaky, yeah. especially since this is going to be his second start off the bench. I have to be honest, early on in this year, I kind of thought he was just overmatched and not very good. And for some reason, that Makers 46 stuck in my head because I think that's the worst grade one of all time. The Turf Classic, he probably just didn't want to go that far. And then I thought maybe he just was reliant and dependent on softer going. And then I thought he ran very well in the Shadwell. I think he's really, really sneaky in here. I don't know if he can win, but I think he's definitely one. If you're playing Exactas Tri-Supers, I would use him.
Yeah, UK listeners have a chance to bet him at 30-1,
He looks like tourist to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, and not a bad thing, huh?
No, exactly.
No, he looks like tourist. He's just like a little touristy, which is fun. I wanted to say touristy.
Touristy. He's a little touristy. I mean, we always talk about this on the show since its inception. Bill Mott with a target.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like this was the goal for this horse, which, you know what, if that's what the case is, then, you know what, be prepared because he looks like he's ready.
Here's a question for you guys. I'm just asking for advice now. If I'm going to use him, even though I in my heart don't like Suédoise, do I almost have to use Suédoise for a penny? Because how do you leave out the horse that just ran down your horse? Or is it okay to just say, okay, last time was the time for Suédoise. I'm going to throw Balarox in as a flyer, and I'm going to oppose Suédoise. Which way would you go between those two, JK?
Are you using Midnight Storm or Heart to Heart?
No.
Then I would rather use one of them to get loose than to use him.
Interesting. So
I guess just to me, I kind of look at it and say, do you like the horse or not?
I don't like him.
Then I wouldn't use him. I guess if you're playing like the pick 6 and he's a backup and you don't want to. But at the same time, the pick 6 is the one that you're going to have to get skinny on at some point. If you're going to spread deep in the pick 4, I guess maybe. But I didn't like the horse going into the Shadwell. I don't want him coming out either. He finished really well. Look, I mean, it was a big effort. You can't deny that. But I don't know. He doesn't do anything for me.
Maybe it's a conversation
and
for another time.
That ground's going to be a little different, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
100%.
For sure.
Canelan's a very, very quirky turf course.
It's one of those things, though, where, in my head, I try in my picks, I try not to, use lapses of logic like that. If a horse just ran down my horse, I typically want to have that horse as at least a backup to not have to kick myself in the butt after the race is over. But, I mean, the difference here is Suédoise is going to be, 8, 10, 12, and Bala, should be 20, 30.
We've got 2 other horses to touch on. We've spent a lot of time on the mile before we go on. We still have 3 more races to talk about. World Approval, using or no?
I'm using.
Backup.
I am using.
Deep backup. I don't like. I think the reason to play the race in part for me might be to get him beat, but it's not. His form's too good. His numbers are too good. He's got to be a backup.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
A horse, just so I can be clear. Yeah, he's an A horse for me. I'd like to do something different, but I can't play a 20-1 shot, and and he's drawing away from him. It just doesn't make any sense. I think he's a good horse. I just he's no type of single for me or anything like that. I don't think he should be favored. But
how about you, Matt? Where are you?
Pick 6 and multis, you gotta have.
To me, it's one of those instances. I kind of agree with Jonathan to an extent. In the pick 6. I know it sounds silly to say this, but I would almost be willing to fade him there. Or maybe it's the other way around. I'd have to think about it more. I don't entirely trust him, but at the same time, it's hard to argue with what he's done. From an individual race standpoint, I don't want him. But from a multi, I'm trying to think. I guess the more invested, the more money I have into whatever wager it is, I have to have him defensively. But if I want to get aggressive and play a big kind of pick 3, he's out, gone, see ya. If you win, I lose. I had somebody say something to me as I was headed out this way, and they go, wow, how can you throw that horse out? And I go, in a 14-horse field, there are probably 1, 2, at most 3 horses that I can look at and say, I'm going to be absolutely stunned if they win. After that, that means that there's 11 that I think actually have a reasonable chance. You're going to throw out at some point horses that can win the race. You can't hate them all, can you?
Yeah. No, it's just a value. Value's the question. I think JK's thinking about, he's playing in the contest. He's thinking about these big Dutch situations where you just can't get beat by a horse who's a likely winner who you don't hate.
Now, contest is a little bit of a different scenario, I think.
In terms of betting the race individually, I really feel like the value might lie in trying to beat him.
Jonathan?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's a situation where I typically don't bet. I don't include horses on fear. It's just like, I mean, he is a pretty good horse, and you can't really knock that he's a good horse, and there's no reason to be upset about him. He's not as good as he's going to be bet that he is good. You know what I mean?
Well,
he's going to
yes.
be overbet, and that's the problem.
It'll be an underlay.
It's such an interesting thing. We're really getting at the crux of the difference between individual race play and multi-race play in a way, right? Because if you've got good opinions and you've got prices, you don't want to go down with the ship of being anti a horse like that necessarily in a multi-race wager. But that doesn't mean that if you're just looking at betting that one race that the horse is any value. So we talk about it all the time. It's betting personality.
And here's the other thing: is I believe, and I could be wrong because I did it this morning, but when I filmed out of the gate, yeah, I did. I used 3 horses in the mile, right, as A horses. I used the 4 Lancaster Bomber, the 10 Ribchester, and then the 5 World Approval. Those are the 3 A horses I had. So if I didn't use World Approval, my only A horses were going to be a 20-1 shot and a horse that I think is outposted and could be over the top. I didn't feel like anyone else deserved to be an A, so I by default kind of fell into using him again.
I think Jonathan tipped his hand. The last horse that I just a quick yes, no, use, or pitch. Roly-poly, Jonathan.
No. I'm anti here. I'm anti here too, and and I love her, and obviously she's got the Group 1 form, and I think I'd have liked her in the other race, and I just think here, I can't design the race for her to win in my mind, and I can't get over the fact that how bad her race was last year. I loved her last year. I was very invested in her last year, and halfway through the race, I would have tripled my bet, and it was just no finish, and I know she's come on since then, but I'm just not feeling her here.
Race 10 Saturday, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Who is up first? Because this is going to be the easiest pick of the entire contest.
Did I manipulate this where I get to go first?
Someone's going to get the power. It's the power of $4. Someone's about to execute here.
Pete, it sounds like you are batting leadoff against mile and 16th 2-year-olds. What else is there? Should I just tell you who you're picking?
Bolt Doro's the banker of the meeting, my friend, and it's a great conversation, and I've enjoyed having it. I mentioned I was on the Final Furlong podcast, and those guys were quoting Simon Rowlands talking about the figure and his view on what Andy did with this figure, and obviously we had Andy on last night with Andy Serling and talked about this figure, and it's one of the things that has been, one of the real talking points of the Breeders' Cup from a handicapper's point of view is what number Bolt Doro ran last time. But here's the thing. Even the busted down number just lays over this field. I see no reason to overthink it. I'm going to take Bolt Doro to the hoop, and I actually think that the referendum on if that figure is too high or too low is who runs second in this race, and I'll let you boys take it from there.
Is it me or you, Jonathan, number 2?
I kind of want it to be me because I'm scared you're going to pick my horse.
All right, no, you know what? Go ahead, take Chad. It's all right.
No, I don't want Chad. I don't want Chad.
You don't want Chad?
He's going to want the figure horse.
All right, have at it, son. It's all you.
Yeah. I mean, I want the other figure horse. I want Solomini. I want Baffert and improving. I want Baffert in California with a horse that ran well enough with a figure. I want Bolt Doro. Don't get me wrong, but and I'm in a stone cold A. Stone cold A.
Yeah, I got it. I'm 100% with you there.
For the purposes of this conversation,
we should almost have that conversation of how many backups and who are the backups, but I suppose we should continue the exercise while picking a horse first.
Yeah, I guess so. My pick is going to be Good Magic. I think Good Magic's going to really relish getting out to 2 turns. You look at the pedigree, you look at the way that he's run. I think there's a lot to like here for Chad. I can't envision a scenario, and maybe I'm going way overboard. I think if he runs the same race, Bolt Doro, he wins by a handful of lengths. If he regresses, he still has a giant chance. And if he improves, it's showtime. I mean, this could be one of those moments where maybe you don't get a Mikhail Barzalona celebration at a Corey Nakatani, but you get something where it's like, We talked about the fig, and you alluded to it, Pete, how, it's been well documented that this fig was actually kind of toned down a little bit from what it actually looked like on paper. But I think I have no knocks about this horse. There's not one knock for me. Can you think of any knock?
It's not a knock, but we don't know a lot about the trainer. It's not a trainer who's been on racing's biggest stages and thrived, and that probably, I don't know if it's I'm just this is just theoretical. Obviously, it doesn't bother me, but I mean, if this horse were trained by Bob Baffert, you could probably take 2 points off the odds.
Jonathan,
same point. I just it's just what do we know about Mick Ruiz, right? And so that's the biggest question for me is we talk about trainers keeping horses good, Bob Baffert, Todd, Chad, Bill Mott, Mick Ruiz hasn't made it to that category yet. So there's a question mark there. I'd feel a lot better about it if the horse was wearing gold shoes and had a Puma endorsement deal.
Did we get that done, JK? What's going on? We're losing our pull in the world.
Rotundo texts me, check in the mail, and so we'll see. We'll see.
If he comes out there with gold shoes, I want to. I want a royalty. The royalty could be a shot of tequila, but I want a royalty.
I can tell you just in the meetings earlier today, there has been no discussion of Usain Bolt making an appearance in the show.
Unbelievable.
Wasted opportunity.
A bit of a prop for, not necessarily a prop, but for each one of you, over under 4 to 5 come post time.
Can I call it a push?
Yeah, I was going to say 4 to 5.
Yeah, I feel like that's a push. That feels like such a good number.
You could call it a push.
I'm calling it a push.
If you had to make a call.
Value, or I'm predicting the morning line?
No. Off odds come post time. Is he over or under 4 to 5?
Oh.
I pegged him at evens. Flat out, even money. 50-50 shot, I think.
I'm like almost sure he'll be 4 to 5. Like for some reason, that's just the number that feels like what he'll be. And I don't think he'll be bad value at that.
He's going to be. It feels like when they open up, he's going to be 3 to 5, and then when he's in the post parade, he's going to be even money, and then when they jump in the gate the last second, he's going to be 4 to 5. I feel like he's going to be 4 to 5.
So I'm just a good odds.
You're just a good odds maker.
That's all we gained from that.
We figured your future.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I know a couple racetracks that could hire you.
Oh, jeez. I'm not touching that.
Oh, man.
All right, so
Travis Stone crosses JK off his Christmas list.
It's not one in New York, by the way. Just so
I would like you to clarify that. Our friend got too much abuse for that nonsense.
We are all in agreement.
No, it's not.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Explain.
Not Saratoga. I was not talking about Travis. Travis's line is great. I'm just saying there's some lines that are silly, and I wasn't even thinking of anyone in particular. I was just saying that if you want to be a line maker, we can get you a job somewhere.
All right. If you good luck pulling those splinters out of your behind. Okay, let's go here.
We're all in agreement. It is Bolt Doro's race to lose, correct?
Absolutely. Let's talk about backups here real quick.
I got to be honest. Jonathan said Stone Cold A. Maybe I use Good Magic as a C.
When you say Stone Cold A, JK, does that mean Stone Cold Lone A and you have a couple of small backups with the free drop Billies and the Sola Minis and the, are you going to play some if he stubs his toe tickets? Because I wouldn't mind, having $25 increments with Bolt Doro and 50-cent increments with 3 other horses just because it's racing. But what do you think?
No, Stone Cold A for me is... That's it.
Zero backups. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. And you guys bring up a good point. I mean, the trainer, obviously, the connections are newer. Let's just say, I don't even want to say low profile. They're just newer. We're not used to seeing the name Mick Ruiz. But when I see a horse that debuted going 6.5 and he won in gate to wire fashion, and then he comes back and completely misses the break, comes from 4.5 off of it at first pace call, it's going 7/8, still wins. And then going 2 turns, presses the pace throughout, draws off like a good thing. This is one of those rare instances where and I know it's a 2-year-old. 2-year-old races, crazy things can happen. I'm going to be absolutely shocked. Look, if he misses the break, like if he goes to his nose, yeah, then okay. I'm going to be very, very surprised Saturday night if this horse doesn't win, and if he doesn't win in pretty good fashion. I think he's the goods. Maybe I'm going way overboard already.
No, I think you're right. I guess my only thing is I think the rest of the sequence kind of narrows down. So I think for extremely little money,
fair,
I can get some insurance.
Okay.
That's all I'm thinking. If I'm going to go, maybe I'm going to spread a little bit in the turf. But I think for very little money, you might be able to buy just a small amount of insurance. And if I were going to buy insurance, Good Magic, who you mentioned, Solomini, and Free Drop Billy would be the tiniest backups. But I'm talking about like a 90-10 situation in terms of the overall investment, maybe 95-5.
Let's go to a race Oh, go ahead, Jonathan. Sorry.
Just take the 10, put it more on the boat door.
That's good. My man. Let's go on to a race that I think is much more contentious and competitive. The 11th race, the penultimate Breeders' Cup race. It's the Turf, mile and a half. I have the honor, but I am going to relinquish. I'm going to go third because I know you guys won't take my horse. But I'm very curious just to hear what your thoughts overall are on this entire race because I think initially I thought, high and unreal, and it's simple as that. I don't think it's that simple. More and more I looked at it. Maybe I'm going the wrong direction, but I'll let one of you gentlemen take off for the first pick and second pick.
It's a hard race, man. I have two horses. I think they're obvious. There are two obvious horses who stand above the market, but they're going to get bet. So if it is me who ends up going first, I might reach for a price just for a little bit of fun. JK, why did you go first?
I used two A horses and out of the gate, Highland Reel and Ulysses. I wish Oscar Performance wasn't in this race because I think Highland Reel would wire him again. I'm not crazy about the idea that Highland Reel is going to now sit off of him, and I still think that Highland Reel can
He's
get it
push
done.
button.
He's going to be my top pick. He
He's
is.
push button.
I just, I've talked about it before, and maybe it's just like, my obsession with last year. I thought that ride that he got last year from Seamus Heffernan was one of the most brilliant rides I have ever seen in my short 10-year racing career. I thought it was magnificent. And so there's this part of me that just wants to keep seeing that over and over again because it was just so brilliant. I just don't think that's going to happen now.
Can I interrupt before you go on with your analysis? I just want to make a point about that specific ride.
Yeah.
Because I agree. I loved seeing it, and it was awesome. But I'm not sure brilliant is the right word. Simply because it was just part of the overall team game plan. He had nothing to lose by making that ride because he was the B team. Ryan Moore, the A team, is on found there.
Yeah, but I almost feel like that's not giving Shamie Heffernan any credit.
I'm just saying I think that before the race it was decided, okay, Shamie, you're going to go to the lead, run as even as you can, and if that works, that's awesome. And if they come and gun you down, if Castellano moves too early and comes and gets you, well, then Found's going to win. So I just feel like I'm not trying to take anything away from it other than to say I think it was like it fell into the team tactics. And the only reason I interrupted you, JK, to say that is because I think there's team tactics maybe at play again this year that are going to go very differently.
Well, they were the same price. They were both 7-2, Found and Highland Reel last year. But I'm with you. I think he's classy. The thing about it the thing that got me over the top to still pick him was that the race 2 weeks ago at Ascot, Champions Day, the horse was never encouraged with the stick. It was almost like it was a prep. They knew the ground was too soft. Let's give him a run over here.
Yeah, it was a prep.
It was a prep.
He was 15-1 in the morning. The horses won 6 grade ones, and it was a group ones, and it was 15-1 in the morning. And he was never hit. It was a prep race. You're absolutely right.
And so now he shows up here, and I like him. And here's the thing: is I wanted to get into it. I've talked about it on the pod, and we talked about it in private. I want to get into Oscar Performance. I want to. so badly, but I don't see a world in which Ulysses and or Highland Reel sit 3rd, 4th, or 5th in Oscar performance wins. He's interesting as heck underneath. I think that if I was keying a horse in the Super, there's not a horse I would key other than him. I think he's a brilliant horse to key in a Super, but I don't see how he can win. Highland Reel is my top pick.
Pete?
Oh, there's so much to talk about in this race, and I could pick, 4 other horses. I'm going to go, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the further end of the odds spectrum. I mean, I've wanted to bet Ulysses in this race since they crossed the line last year, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and bet Talismanic.
Interesting.
And the case is looking at, he might not be good enough, but looking at the historical profile of Breeders' Cup Turf winners, and this is another shout out to friend of the podcast, Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today, who pointed out to me, who is not a Talismanic fan, by the way, but he did point out to me that the horses who win the Breeders' Cup Turf are not the 10 furlong horses stretching out, not the Decorated Knights.
Even the Ulysses.
Not even the Ulysses. They're horses, like Conduit, who runs in the St. Ledger. They're stayers, and they get brought. They can get brought into the race, especially if there's going to be pace. And I feel like there could be pace here. We talked about Oscar Performance. We talked about Highland Reel. Highland Reel with his stablemate Seventh Heaven, who's also not out of it and is one of the ones I considered picking. He has free reign to be super aggressive and not. Moore's not going to worry about, he's going to go when he feels like it's fit to go, but I feel like he's going to err on the side of being aggressive as opposed to passive. And there's a world in which the pace just hots up here. And Talismanic, that form of the Foy is not bad. I know Deshinga's Secret came back and it was 6th in the Arc and then ran again today and I guess was 3rd in a Group 1 in Germany.
Cloth of Stars was good, though.
Cloth of Stars was excellent. Had a very tough trip in this race and then went ahead and ran 2nd in the Arc. And so now you got Talismanic coming back. Andre Fabre, he might not have had that much success in the Breeders' Cup recently, but, he's one of the greatest trainers, ever. Yeah. So I'm not too worried about him. This is a horse who I think could be 20-1 and finishing, and that's who I want. But, just to make it very clear, multi-race purposes, I'm going to look to probably press at the shorter end of the odds spectrum with Highland Reel and Ulysses, and then have some backups, some value backups. But my favorite value backup from here anyway is Talismanic.
I have to be honest, I'm so glad that you brought...
Before you go, Matt.
Yep.
Before you go. Talismanic has the coolest white... He's
got a great blaze.
Go up past his knee.
Yeah.
And his legs are white to his knees, so... You can tell your girlfriend to bet that horse and say it's say he's wearing knee-high socks or something. That might
he's
be
a cool looking
just
horse.
That little piece of trivia.
Yeah, he's very easy to when you're making your trip notes for France. He's very easy to spot.
I'm very glad though that you brought up the idea, and not just you, other folks that are respected over in Europe, that not this 1.5 miles. I don't think it's a slam dunk for the likes of Decorated Knight, and particularly Ulysses. There's a part of me that really wants to be against Ulysses, not on form. Obviously, his form speaks for itself. I go through and I look. Is there any coincidence that his runs at 1.5 miles, maybe he's not necessarily giving up ground at the end, but he's not finishing the same way that he did at 10 furlongs. And guess what? Even go back to last year's turf. I get that he was making up a little bit of ground late, but it's not as though he was really...
He wasn't flying.
He wasn't finishing in a big way. He came home in 23-1. There are other horses in this race, and I'm going to give you just an extra piece here. There are other horses in this race domestically that are going to come home a hell of a lot faster than 23-1. I just kind of feel like Ulysses, I think he's a really, really talented horse. And if this race is at 1.25 miles, basically I would be saying Highland Reel's in trouble. Put a ring around this one. I just think Ulysses may be a little bit up against it from a distance standpoint. Decorated Knight as well. I think he's more of a 10 furlong kind of horse. Highland Reel is the horse to beat. I don't think there's any question about it. I'm going way off the reservation here.
Let's hear it.
And I'm sure I'm going to get laughed at when people find out who I'm picking in here. I, for the longest time, have looked at It's in the Post and said, the minute they stretched him out, he's been a different animal. He's been an entirely different animal. He was terribly unlucky in the Del Mar handicap 2 starts back. Tyler Bayes it was a peculiar ride. Let's put it bluntly. And the trip after that was very, very bad. It just did not work. And I know a lot of people are going to look at that John Henry Turf Cup and say, you beat Prime Attraction by a head. Prime Attraction would be 150-1 in this race, if not higher than that. My point is that race was at 10 furlongs. The Del Mar Handicap was at 11. A mile and a half, I think, is what this horse wants. You look at his two most recent runs at a mile and a half, his only two runs at a mile and a half, one over yielding ground, one over firm ground, one in Southern California, one in Kentucky. He's 2 for 2. The way that this horse finishes, and I think he's going to get the jump on some of the big European horses, the Talismanics, the other horses in that vein, and he's going to be 20+1. I think, again, maybe this is just me being completely out in left field. I think it's in the post as a legitimate chance to win this race.
I'm never going to knock somebody picking a horse that's going to be 25-1. And, geez, if you can find somebody over there to make a bet for you, you might get 50s.
I think he has a legitimate chance. Again, he's far from the likeliest of winners. I can't make that clear enough. But the other thing, too, is his 2 starts off the bench. And this is just something that I've always liked to look for. I believe in the whole paired up buyer top. And he's paired up 102s in his 2 starts off the bench. I think you're going to get a forward move out of him. Whether it's enough to win, we'll find out. But I think he will. Put it this way, he will outrun his odds. I have no question about that.
It's an interesting idea. I have, this is just totally random, but I just remembered this, that long ago somebody who knew a little bit about horse racing mentioned to me the idea, this sounds so crazy to say it out loud, but I'm going to just say it because it underlines what you just said, that French-bred horses seem to do well on the Del Mar turf. It's an idea, just a weird little idea I heard many moons ago.
They interviewed Jeff Mullins, I believe it was Steve Anderson, a few days ago, and Mullins just joked. He goes, he's French. He's not really an American horse. He's a French horse. He started over there, and then he came over here after that, and that was that. But I just, again, and Jonathan, maybe you're going to tell me that I'm just completely insane, and I think 95% of listeners or players are going to think that that's just a crazy opinion. I love everything about this horse.
No, I don't think you're insane at all. But speaking of insane, I dare someone to tweet a certain brother, I won't say any names, a certain brother that they like It's in the Post and see what the response is. If you can figure out what that means, it's a little bit coded, I get it. But just tweet a certain brother, and I don't mean brother as in like brother like, you know, like me, but I mean like brother.
A brother of the trainer, a brother of, what are we talking about here?
Like we talk about a set of brothers on this show quite a bit.
Oh no.
And there's one of those brothers that if you want to get a reaction, ask him what he thinks about It's in the Post.
I see.
And
it took me a while, but I figured it out.
Yeah, and I'm going to assume that it would be a staunch negative. Just throw him out.
It's not going to be a negative. It's just going to be that a little bit to the point that you made, that there's been some curious situations with the horse in the last, I don't know, 4 starts.
Interesting. Some conspiracy theory on the pod. I don't mind that.
No, not conspiracy theory. Just I'm being a little bit coy. I'm just saying it's poor rides, and if you want to get if you know which brother to tweet to get a rider response.
Yes. We're very aware with Duke Matisse's view on certain riders and rides. He's not hard to get riled up. We're still waiting to see if he makes that over/under of 28.5 negative comments about riders over the
you know what
Breeders' Cup.
The thing is too about this horse, and I'm really not trying to harp on Tyler Bays. I think Bays is a solid rider. I mean, he almost got this horse stopped last time out when he won by a head. I think if he had gotten out into the clear earlier, he got stopped at about the 8th pole. If he had gotten him out, and I don't mean stop, he had to tap on the brakes and wait a minute. But then you go back to the Del Mar Handicap. That didn't work out. The UN was that just obscene pace stool, just the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. And then the Whittingham, I don't have a good answer for that. But it was just, I understand anyone that wants to go in and critique a couple of the rides.
Before we leave the race, I do want to point out again that as you said, JK, in terms of odds, you might not know who the second string or first string was last year with Coolmore, but you always know who the first string and second string are with Coolmore because of who rides. But not always. There are some weird things where certain combinations of their ownership go for certain riders. But in a meeting like the Breeders' Cup, Ryan Moore's riding the first string. Once again, Shamie Heffernan might just find himself on the right one. A lot of people I respect have bet Seventh Heaven, and I went Talismanic, but you could make the exact same case for Seventh Heaven. This is what she wants. 12 on firm. She goes great left-handed. Her form is a little bit buried. I'm not leaving her out of spread tickets. And for a last one to not leave out of spread tickets, Cliffs of Mohair.
See, I thought long and hard about this horse.
On the tape, he's constantly running up behind other horses and causing himself trouble. And if you go far back enough, you're looking at a horse who was second in the Derby and beat Cracksman, who'd be 4-5 in here.
So, the thing, too, is I feel like ground goes a long way with this horse as well. Getting back to firm going is going to really, really benefit him. And, maybe this was a little bit of silly wagering over there overseas. This horse was 8-5
the Coral Eclipse
against Ulysses and Barney Roy.
I was meant to go that day. I was in London, and I got invited to London Pride, and I just, I wanted to bet Ulysses, but I was like, how many times in my life am I going to go get to hang out at London Pride? So I went and did that instead. But and then of course I saw Ulysses won at 9-1.
I think Cliffs of Moher, if you're going to use just look, if you don't think my horse is just asinine enough, if you want to go next level, take the third string of the O'Brien entrant over here. I think this horse is very, very interesting.
I don't think it's crazy at all. JK, what did you see anything in this one?
No, I'm over here furiously scribbling down notes. Here's the thing, I love, before I even was lucky enough to be on a podcast, I love podcasts and listening to people talk about racing and calling up friends and talking about racing for this point exactly. Because Matt's point about It's in the Post was brilliant. I just didn't see it. The 1.5 races and really improving. We get so caught up in form and our opinions and blah, blah. We just completely lose some of those sneaky points, and other people around us can help point them out. Talismanic, I thought that the horse had cool-looking legs, but I was never going to use. And now these are two horses that have worked their ways onto my B tickets or into my underneath spots, and even some saver spots. And so it just got me excited to be a part of this, and everyone else listening, that they got some good nuggets. Those are good. I really wouldn't have had those two.
Try not to get beat in a spread race. I think that's the logic.
Sure.
You can't spread everywhere, but if you're strong in the race before and you're strong in the race after, why not spend an extra couple of dollars to cover some long shots that make sense?
All right, gentlemen, let's move on to the big one of the weekend. 12th race Saturday afternoon. It's the Breeders' Cup Classic. 1.25 miles on the main track. All eyes are going to be on. I feel like this is very much, you have the big three, and then you've got maybe a fringe fourth as far as Baffert's other runner, West Coast, is concerned. But let's just go right in post position order as far as the big horses are concerned. And the biggest of them big horses is down on the inside. Number 1 is Arrowgate. I guess we need to talk about it, but we actually need to draft first. So who has the first pick? I punted my first pick last time off.
I think you get it.
You want me to take it?
Yeah, I think you get it.
Jonathan, does that work?
Yeah, it works for me.
All right, and
as long as you don't pick a gray horse.
I'm going to take Collected. I really think he's the horse in here, and the way that I'm going to position it Saturday night on NBC, 8:00 Eastern on the big network. The way I'm going to position it is simply, there are a couple of questions for the major players in here, with the exception of one horse. One horse legitimately has no questions. If you don't believe he's good enough, that's your opinion. But he has no questions. He's unbeaten on fast dirt. He's won at 1.25 miles. He's won at Del Mar. He's beaten Arrowgate. He can win on the lead or from just off of it. I don't know. To me, there's no real knock against Collected. And I feel like I have not heard his name more than a handful of times in the past week and a half. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be quite honest. But I'm going to go with Collected in this spot.
I think he'll be single-digit odds. In that sense, it's not like he's completely going to be.
No, I think he's going to be 5 or 6.
Yeah, but
I pegged him at 3.
I hear you for somebody. If you've priced up the race and if you're not scared of the big two, it's
not that I'm not scared.
Crazy.
It's just I think I at least have. I have questions about both Arrowgate and Gunrunner, acknowledging that Arrowgate's best race wins this race. Period.
I think we'd all have to.
We all
agree
agree
with that.
Who is number 2? I'll let you boys figure that out.
You go, Jonathan.
You're only doing that because you know who I'm going to pick and you know who you're going to pick.
I'm happy to pick.
It's like a weak.
No, that's not
weak charity.
I guess you're right.
Charity.
I have a shorter price I could pick, and I have a long price I could pick. So but I don't want to steal the long price if you want him.
No, I should take Gunrunner and rub it in. That way you have to.
You can take Gunrunner.
Arrogant for me. No. Arrogant. I thought that. I know there's the surface talks and when I logged online this morning to watch him gallop and noticed that they brought him out in the dark. I've never seen a Baffert horse galloping in the dark. It was a little bit concerning for me, but look, this horse, in my opinion, had something go wrong. Something wasn't right with him this summer. I don't know what it was. I've got no inside information. That's my belief. I think he's going to show up and run the races that we know that he can. I love the inside post. I think that it's going to be a situation where now he's into the race, gets his attention into the race, has a horse on his outside, kind of encourages that kind of competitive spirit being down inside and kind of wakes him up a little bit, similar to one of his best races I think we all forget about, which was the Pegasus and how he won that race. And I think that he's going to show up in the spot and make us all proud again. I use 2 A horses, though, just to be clear. I'm not a single situation with Arrogant. I think Gunrunner's sitting on a huge, huge race, but I find Arrogant to be the one that I'm going to side with.
I'll take Gunrunner to get the points late and hopefully push me out of the avatar change zone. I think there's been a lot of talk about, maybe he's not his best at 10. I don't really get it. I mean, I feel like his 10 furlong races are really good. He lost to Arrogant when Arrogant was on top of the world and a complete freak, but it's very hard. The only horse I could think of who ever endured anything like Arrogant's San Diego, and this is before both of your guys' time, there used to be a horse called Gentleman, who was a big Group 1 horse, or Grade 1 horse in California, who at one point, I can't remember what race it was, maybe the Santa Anita Handicap, bombed at ran 4th at 1-20, and the same thing. And he came back and he ran some good figures, but he never ran better than second. He just wasn't the same horse. And I just get that feeling. I've made the Ali Holmes comparison before on the podcast about Arrogant, and I hope I'm wrong. Believe me, I won't be mad if he comes and wins. And in my biggest, most important bets, I'm going to be alive to him. But I'd rather have Gunrunner. I just think what he's shown recently, I get the idea. I brought it up on the show before. I made Scott Calder, a cricket fan, very happy when I suggested that the potential knock on Gunrunner would be that he was a flat track bully, one who excels when conditions are in his favor. But I think this horse is ready to step up and excel when there's a lot more to prove. There's a lot going on here. I do have a long shot backup I want, but I can't leave Gunrunner unpicked in our contest.
Let's do our third place key horse, right? You're playing the trifecta. You got Gunrunner, Arrogant collected with Gunrunner, Arrogant collected with. Who are you going to single in that third spot, Matt?
Oh man. Well, I tell you what. I'll just tell you who I picked in the paper, and this is not. I guess this is going to kind of be a cop out, even though I don't even entirely believe that he would be the one that I would want there. I love Pavel. I think Pavel is a very, very talented horse. I really didn't want him running here. I wanted them to put him away and wait for the Pegasus. I think as a 4-year-old, Pavel could be – I feel like Pavel could be next year's Gunrunner. I think he could be an absolute monster in those sort of middle-distance races. And heck, even out to 10 furlongs, I'm not entirely sure that he adored that trip in the Jockey Club. But, I think Pavel is very, very talented. I picked him 4th in the paper. I guess by default he's going to be my answer there.
We talk a lot about lone speed. Everybody's always talking about lone speed. What about the lone closer angle? And what if I give you a lone closer who made a visually arresting move absolutely against the profile of the track in the Travers?
It's an awesome move.
What about Gunnevera to get a piece here? And if it happens to hot up too fast and they all attack each other, I'm going to have this horse for a penny to win. I think he'll be $1 million. I'm seeing 33s and 50s over in the UK. I mean, he ain't going to be that here, but in the picks, he's going to pay that much. I'll take Gunnevera, and I like your idea, JK, of maybe sticking him in third. What about you? How do you answer your own question?
Well, I was going to answer it with Gunnevera, but someone else answered it with Gunnevera. So,
you asked the question. I can't just give it to you on a silver platter.
It's funny enough, I'm gonna say a couple sentences about a horse, and then I'm gonna give it back to Matt, because I think Matt can more interestingly say another horse that I think is people should hear about.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
For me, I think Mufti is one that you can consider with Baffert. I don't think 1 1/8 is what he wants to do. However, Mufti won last time. Now it's second time Baffert. It's 1 1/4, which he probably wants to do. He's kind of just pretend it's the 6th horse's opportunity, and then I think you'll have a better idea of like kind of allowing that to get into your brain. I think he's very live for third, but I think Matt's horse that he was talking about, which I want to hear why he ultimately didn't pick. But I think his horse that he's going to talk about next is probably live for that spot as well.
Yeah, you know what? I got to be honest with you. I maintain this, maybe with the exception of Gun Runner's run up in the Woodward. To me, the most visually impressive, most recent race from any horse in this field was War Decree over in Europe, over on the synthetic surface. I tell you what, he's light on experience. He's light on time form numbers. He's going to need to improve by leaps and bounds. But you go back and you watch that run at Dundalk and tell me that that's not an incredibly talented racehorse, that just maybe for one reason or another, certain things have not broken the way that he needs them to break. It feels like that whole synth race was a means to an end to get him over here to run him on dirt. We know O'Brien has a fascination. This is real. What is this? Kind of the last big race for him to win, the Breeders' Cup Classic and the Kentucky Derby, those two. I don't know that this horse can win, but I'm not kidding. Jonathan knows. I texted him probably, about two weeks ago, and I said, am I nuts to think about picking War Decree on top, ahead of Arrogate, ahead of Gun Runner, ahead of Collected? And ultimately, I feel like common sense prevailed, and I said, in any other year, I probably would. You got to beat 3 really nice ones. I think it's just a little bit too much, but I don't think he's totally out of it if you're playing any sort of an exotic.
I'll tell you this:
if you're a trend player, the last time he texted me that,
he
texted me, I think Gervin can win the Haskell, and I responded to him with the peanut emoji, the 2 little peanuts. Which, if you don't have the peanut, if the peanut emoji is not in your most recent emoji uses, you're not using emojis right. And then he asked me again, do I like War Decree? And I sent him the peanut emojis again. So if you're a trend guy, if you're a DRF formulator guy, when JK responds with the nut emoji, Matt Bernier is 2-0. So you might just want to keep that in mind.
Pete, I don't want to hijack this thing, but let's just project forward. If for some reason Jonathan is low man on the totem pole, if for some reason, my only suggestion for his avatar would be the peanut emoji.
Oh, it's done.
It's
done. Yeah,
that would be my suggestion.
Let's root him down and put that peanut up there.
What do you think about War Decree?
I don't really see it. I mean, but I will say this: you were not the only sharp person who's made that argument to me when I was doing the Final Furlong podcast earlier today with Emmett and Kevin over there. Those boys were more excited about him than they were Churchill in the spot.
I agree 100%. I don't like Churchill here at all.
And I like Churchill as a horse a lot, but we've seen that particular cross hasn't worked so great on the dirt in the past for Team Coolmore. It's a little – I don't think I would have loved him in the mile either, but it's
is it unfair to compare him to Glen Eagles?
No.
Because that's what I see when I look at him.
No, it's really – I mean, I think he's better and tougher than Glen Eagles, and I don't dislike him. Like, I really disliked Glen Eagles. And Churchill, I think Churchill's – one of his bigger problems is the fact that it's such a tough race. But, we just haven't seen the Galileos, working it on the dirt. I think he'll over there he's going to take especially undue money. But some of that will spill over into the pools here. I'm a big Churchill fan. I'd love to be wrong. It's a free roll for them. Should he even run third or fourth, it's going to increase his value. Like, I get it, but I'd rather have War Decree than him. I probably won't have either on my tickets, but out of deference to you, Matt, and the nut emoji, maybe I need to have like a 50-cent pick 4 combo alive with War Decree.
I'm curious what both of you think about West Coast for Baffert, kind of the third of the four in here for Bob. I look at him and I say, boy, you've never been out of the exacta from 8 Lifetime. You've got 6 wins. You're over $1.5 million in earnings, and it seems like you're trending the right direction from a buyer standpoint. Why don't I like him?
He does. Is it that he doesn't look fast enough? Is that it's such a tough year? Is it that he's going to catch money? Is it some combination of those three things?
To me, anyway, I think it's all of it.
Just leaves me a little cold.
Jonathan, where do you stand on this one?
I just don't like him because I thought he was on the good part of the track at Belmont when he ran in the easy goer. You want to be wide and at Losail. The inside was a good spot to be at Saratoga, and then he ran the big race in the Pennsylvania Derby at Park. So I don't know what to make of him after that. But I mean, he ain't arrogant and he ain't gun runner. I know that for sure, and so I feel good enough fading him. But I mean, unless he takes a left-handed turn and eliminates 7 horses like Bayard, I don't.
You had to bring that up, didn't you? You had to bring that up.
Is there any realistic scenario where either one of you can see one of the big 3 not winning?
I mean,
and not having any ridiculous weird thing happen. Just all 3 of them getting beat on the square. Is there any scenario where you can see that happening?
A total meltdown.
Yeah,
like a total meltdown. Everybody engages too early.
They go 45-4, 46, and it's a stagger fest down the lane.
Or just one of those. Maybe it's the fraction, but maybe it's between 6 and 8 that something stupid happens.
Sure, they crank it up to 22-4 in that.
The Gunnevera. That's the Gunnevera scenario to me.
Okay,
I think it's not likely, but I think it's that maybe there's a 10% chance of some sort of meltdown happening, like that just something completely chaotic happens. But I'm pretty sure it'll be Gunnevera who benefits if that does happen.
JK?
No, I don't see a world in which the 2 win. So
okay, interesting.
I don't even. I am assuming who you picked as the 3rd in the big 3, but in my world, there's only 2 big ones. And
why are you anti-collected?
Yeah, why are you anti-collected?
It's not that I'm anti-collected. I think he's a nice horse, right? I think that a horse would win the Breeders' Cup Turf if they put him on the turf. No, I just don't. I don't see a world. I mean, so design the race for me, right? He breaks from the outside and he clears and he makes the lead and Gunrunner sits off of him and he holds off Gunrunner. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't want that.
He sits off of Arrogate and passes him.
No, I mean that's assuming that Arrogate gets that position.
You don't think Arrogate makes the lead?
What's the trip that he gets?
I think Gunrunner goes and clears. I think Arrogate is content in the pocket, basically. He's going to be forward enough where he's not going to be outrun, but I think even if you ride him, he's not fast enough to clear off to the front. Keep in mind, his Travers last year, it's not like they were burning out there. It's not like he's got giant front-end gas. He has the ability to be positioned well, but it's not like he's a burner, at least the way that I'm hoping this thing works out. Gunrunner clears. Arrogate is content maybe 2 or 3 lengths off of it. Collected is breathing down Gunrunner's neck the whole way. And maybe I'm making too much of it, but I kind of relate it back to the Ulysses talk in the turf, where that 1.25 to 1.5 miles, I don't think he loves that. I don't think Gunrunner truly appreciates the 9th to the 10th furlong. It doesn't mean that he can't get it, but I wonder if all of a sudden he starts asking a little bit or comes up wanting. I don't have that concern about Collected. I know that 10 furlongs is within his range. I think, again, it's a little bit of his hopeful. I mean, look, because Gunrunner may just be a different animal now. And that's entirely possible. I've heard people bring that argument up, and I can't dispute it until we find out Saturday. But I don't think I have any real reservation about Collected. He may not be as naturally talented, but I don't know that he's not either.
JK, design this race. Design this race, JK.
Okay, well, let's just go with Matt's design at first, and then I'll come back to it. If Gunrunner clears, is on the lead, and Collected is sitting off of him, and Arrogate's in the pocket, if Gunrunner's not going to get 1.25 miles, we're not going to know that until the 8th pole, right? So here's the thing. I see it is if that's the case, right? Gunrunner, Collected sitting out of him. Gunrunner is going to open up on Collected and get him off the bridle. And if Gunrunner, if the 10th furlong jumps on Gunrunner's back, then someone's going to come from out of it. But it's not going to be someone who's sitting off of him because he's going to put him away. He's going to put him away at the 3/8. The 3/8 pole, when they're on the turn, they're coming off the turn, then Gunrunner is going to get away from Collected. And he's going to – that's how I look. That's how I design it. And I don't see how how Collected's going to just, inherit that. There's going to be some real horses running at him. I mean, Pavel's a real horse. Muptahij is a real horse. Your horse War Decree's a real horse. Muptahij. I mean, there's all these horses. Gunnevera, they're going to come running. I don't think that the winner, if it's not one of those two, is going to come from someone who's on the pace.
Let me ask you this. My original idea about this race before they drew was the one thing I know is that Gunrunner is going to be best of speed. Now with Arrogate on the rail, it's kind of jammed up my race design sensors. Because I do think there's this world in which Arrogate just sends and comes out of there. And then all of a sudden, I don't know. If Arrogate sends, what do you do on Gunrunner? Do you sit and pounce, or do you go?
Why wouldn't you sit?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think you would sit, but it just like it's not what I was originally thinking before the draw. They'd even have to worry about.
To me, that goes back to what we had discussed with the Distaff, where I just think naturally Gunrunner is a much much quicker horse early, and I know he's a better gate horse. That's the other thing we got to talk about with Arrogate is it may not even be a matter of you got to use him. Is he going to have his head screwed on right, and is he going to break alertly? Because if there was a knock before this little Del Mar summer hiccup with this horse, it was that his only real knock is that he's not a great gate horse. He never has been.
No, and it seems to have kind of gotten worse.
Yeah.
That was a point, again, to give props to Candace Hare. There was an article she wrote a while back about how, fractionally he seems slower early. That doesn't seem like a sign of improving form.
Yeah, I mean, Pete, you talked about designing the race. I think if I was designing this race, I think something to keep in mind about, Arrogate being on the lead. He broke from the inside at Gulfstream in the Pegasus and didn't go to the lead. He sat the pocket, like Matt said. Baffert has Collected. And if you think about what these trainers have to do when they have multiple horses in the race, you figure they have to sit down with their owner and say, this is the strategy that best gives us the chance to win. I don't see him sitting down with Collected's owner saying, look, here's the best chance we have to win. We're going to rate. We're going to sit 2 or 3 wide because the gray horse on the inside is going to go to the lead. I just don't think that makes any sense.
It's a great question, though.
Collected's going to go to the front. Arrogate's going to sit the pocket and try to tip out on the backside. Mike's going to find time on the backside to get him in the clear, just like he did in the Pegasus, and circle from there. So I think Collected will go to the front. Gunrunner will sit off of him. And Arrogate will sit third and fourth early and be the one that picks up the pieces. I don't see a world in which Gunrunner is loose on the lead.
I guess that's the thing. I don't know. I'm not looking at it as if he's loose. I think he's going to have some company on the front with Collected. I just think the difference this time around is, and this is my only this is part of my question for Gunrunner, the 10th furlong, and what happens when, it's a beautiful thing at Saratoga when the air quotes rabbit goes 48 in a piece. That's not being a rabbit. And it's also a beautiful thing when Neolithic, who just got beat last week by the Player. Now, look, I like the Player. I think he's a nice little horse, but we're talking about an entirely different caliber of animal now. What happens when they don't just go away like they have? Who knows? Maybe he's just matured that much and is that unbelievable raging form right now, because I haven't heard a bad word about him. It's just I'm looking at him at 9-5 going, what real edge do you have on the field? I'm looking at Arrogate at 2-1 going, what real edge right now? I know your best wins, period. So you could almost argue that 2-1 would be value. I look at Collected at 5 or 6 and I go, I'm checking almost all the boxes here. What is there strictly from a value standpoint? To me, that just makes the most sense.
You're making me like Gunrunner less.
I'm not even, and that was not my intention at all. It was just more a matter of, I'm not entirely convinced that there's. I feel like it's just a perfect storm of things that has led him to be this horse that's just decimating fields. You go back after the World Cup, he's run 3 times. He's won 3 grade ones. Name the best horse that he beat.
Was it Keen Ice?
Yeah.
I mean, Keen Ice in this race is the 5th choice. And he's coming.
I completely agree. Like we talked about earlier, though, it's I'm a big believer in who you ran against, but also how you finished. And,
yeah, I agree.
And the LPs. He's got good LPs too. I mean, I think
I won't be surprised at all if he wins. Don't get me wrong.
You can't. It's one of those things where I get it. I mean, I even made the statement before about you can make the case that he's a flat track bully. He's beating up on inferior composition. I guess I've had too many of these green flashes. Competition with perfect setups. But the fact of the matter is, I think he has developed into a push button horse. I think he's got enough finish. I'm not like super excited about betting him at 9-5, but I mean he's everywhere for me. I mean most of my action, I feel like. If you could get 1-2 on the big 2 versus the field, I feel like that would be enough. I feel like they have that kind of an edge. I would definitely want some Guinevere in there. You're making a very compelling case for Collected as well. But I just think that it's hard. Sometimes it's hard not to overthink these type of races.
You know what though? But hearing you guys and the way that you're talking about this, it's the same. It's everything I've heard for the past 2 weeks, is that it's essentially a 2-horse race, and it makes me wonder, am I overrating Collected?
I mean, you got to look at that figure last time, too, and it was it's interesting because, the buyer was strong, and the buyer's not an outlier. Like, everybody's figure is strong on that race, but I feel like if you scratch the surface of it, it was a very, very difficult figure to make. And to me, the thing that's holding me back is Arrogate, to me, just did not make a good visual impression in that race. He was off and on, and the idea that he could have run within 5 points of his best figure, I'm just not feeling it. Like, I don't fully buy it. I know this is crazy, and everybody disagrees with me, but I kind of feel like that figure in my heart, like the way that I'm looking at this race, I'm looking at it almost as if that figure is like a 105.
Really?
Yeah, I could be totally wrong, but like that's a little bit where my gut's going, and I still want to use Arrogate because but nothing to do with those last 2 races. Just going back to the previous form and the 4 big ones, but it's just enough to give me pause about the other horses coming out of that race. We'll have a little bit of a clue from the Dirt Mile. So that might, that might change things a little too.
One of the last things to throw out before we button things up, Craig, how long have we gone? Just out of curiosity.
About 2.5.
We're at 2.5. So
you're kidding.
We need to probably we're going to need to button. This was supersized by a million, so we'll need to button this up here.
That shows you how fun it was.
Pretty darn quick. Here's just a hypothetical scenario that we'll lay out, and then we'll wrap this entire show up. Pete, you brought up the idea of Arrogate going out there. I mean, does this turn into a match race almost? And then I almost wonder at that point, are they each in danger of forgetting about the rest of the field?
I mean, I think that's part of
that's the Guinevere?
That's part of where I came up with that idea.
Okay.
So I do think there's some chance that happens. If they just hook up too early and go hammer and tongs, something completely chaotic could potentially happen.
Jonathan?
No, I don't see chaos.
You think it's one of those two? Like if you could get 1-2 on those two, you bet 1,000 to win 500 on those two. You're happy with that? That was a question, Jacob.
Hello?
Did you lose me? We've perhaps used all the bandwidth on producer Craig's computer. Did you hear the question or no? He might be gone.
We may have lost him.
He might have fallen asleep.
That may have been just the ultimate see ya. Mike, drop him out of here.
Yeah, maybe that's the universe telling us something.
I was going to say, that's probably telling us it's time to get some dinner and get ready for a long week ahead. Pete, any final thoughts leading into, well, right now, you figure, I'm still looking at my computer. It's still on East Coast time. It's only 20 of 8 here on the West Coast. It's 20 of 10 on the East Coast. We're about a day and change away from the Breeders' Cup kicking off. Any final thoughts?
I can't wait, man. So excited to be here. Can't wait to get back to Del Mar. Thanks to the listeners. So many great questions. Hopefully we covered enough of them. Matt, so great to be back.
Yeah, pleasure, man. This is always fun. I love coming back and hanging out with you guys. Wish we could do it more.
Yeah,
Maybe we can down the road.
It's phenomenal just to be able to. This is what we would have been doing at dinner anyway, and
Yes.
hopefully it's a show that people will listen to. Hopefully we didn't punish you too much with the 3-hour show. But hey, if you've been watching the World Series, I guess it fits right in.
I was going to say, but guess what? Considering we started right around first pitch, and we are just through 5 innings. That's insanity to me. Oh,
He's back.
Oh, it's y'all's dodgy Wi-Fi at the hotel. It's not my fault.
Dodgy hotel Wi-Fi, a hallmark of the podcast since the beginning.
Any closing statements from you, Jonathan, leading into the Breeders' Cup?
Pete was asking me a question. If I get 1 to 2 on those 2 horses, I'm just telling you right now. If I'm in contention in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge, it's going to be an all-in double play live to those 2 horses. So I'm not going to wait around for that last race. It'll be an all-in double play to Arrogant and Gun Runner. I think that those 2 are the most likely winners, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. It's definitely going to be fun. I feel bad for you guys not being able to get the breakfast hookup tomorrow because you both crossed me at least once on this podcast. But like I said, Matt's a superstar. He can get in anyways. But Pete, you're in trouble.
I'll be down at Denny's instead of getting the best bacon in San Diego.
Gentlemen, this has been fun. This has been the DRF Players Podcast and the Matt Bernier Show. The boys are on every Tuesday and Friday at 11 Eastern. I'm on now pretty soon. It's going to be every Monday and Friday. I know we said this months ago, but it'll be Monday and Friday.
Monday or Tuesday?
Tuesday.
And Friday?
Technically, it'll be on Tuesday. We'll be recording it on Monday. But so you'll have a couple of Tuesday and Friday situations. For Peter Thomas Fornatale, for Jonathan Kinchin, my name is Matt Bernier. Pete, why don't you take it away with the traditional sign-off?
May you win all your photos.